Almost 1 in 5 male professional players who took part in a new survey are using snus, nicotine pouches, or both, and nearly half would likely to stop using snus within 12 months. The study by Loughborough University, commissioned by the Professional Footballers Association, PFA, also identified that 2 out of 5 players had tried the pouches at least once. The report suggests that actual usage figures are likely to be higher because players may not want to disclose they used snus, even in an anonymous survey, which is the first research on its specific use in football. As many as 628 male players based at either Premier League or EFL clubs were surveyed, as well as 51 women's Super League players. Of the male respondents, 18% say they currently use snus, while 42% said they had tried the substance at least once. The figures for female players were 22% and 39%, respectively. Nearly half of the men, at 48%, indicate a desire to quit using SNUS in the next year, but just 9% in the WSL. Interviews were also conducted with 16 professional club performance and medical staff. What is snus? Snus is a tobacco product in a sachet, similar to a small tea bag, which is placed under the lip and releases nicotine into the bloodstream. It is illegal to be sold in the United Kingdom, but not against the law to use, while tobacco-free nicotine pouches are legal. Most players use nicotine pouches rather than tobacco-based snus, however, they often refer to nicotine pouches used in the term snus. Why do footballers use snus? Of the 45 men and the women that perceive performance benefit from using snus, 29% and 55% respectively cited improved mental readiness as the key benefit. Of the 84 men and 11 women who replied as to whether they had experienced certain effects, 56% and 36% respectively said snus had helped them relax. It is used most commonly after training and after matches, with one of the performers and medical staff saying players use snus as a coping mechanism. The survey found that pouches are also used as an appetite suppressant, and that users often started using the products in a bid to fit in with other, often more senior teammates. For male players, 56% gave this as a reason, rising to 73% among women. What are the potential negative impacts? The report noted that a review of available evidence suggests snus use is associated with an increased risk of esophagus and pancreatic cancer in comparison to non-smokers, and to an increased risk of cardiovascular disease. There is also strong evidence of an association between snus use and mouth lesions. A majority of male players, 58%, and more than 3/4 female players, 86%, in the study said they had not previously received any information about snus. In March 2023, the PFA said a growing number of players were using snus, with some receiving help for addiction. More than half of the male users in the survey, 53%, and almost 3/4 female users, 73%, reported elements of nicotine dependence, such as cravings and using without awareness or intention. Withdrawal symptoms reported included anxiety, irritability, and restlessness. Nearly 2/3 of the male respondents, 62% in the survey, said they sourced snus products from a shop, while just over half the women, at 55%, purchased them online. The report also highlights the risk of an adverse anti-doping finding if products have been contaminated. It adds that club bans had not been effective in deterring use, and recommends personalised external support, avoiding stigmatising those seeking help. This is an important piece of work that will help players, clubs, and medical staff make informed decisions about snus use, said Dr. Michael Bennett, the PFA's Director of Player Welfare. Importantly, these findings tell us that while a lot of players appear to be looking to substances like snus as a coping mechanism to handle the growing demands of the game, many are not fully aware of its effects and addictive qualities. Dr. Daniel Reid, lead researcher and lecturer at the Institute for Sport Business, Loughborough University, London, added the findings show that snus and tobacco-free nicotine pouch use among professional footballers is higher than typically seen in the UK general population, and players often use these products to relax and manage the stress. The head of the Royal College of Nursing has stepped down to run for Sinn Féin in the UK general election. Pat Cullen is seeking the Irish Republican Party's nominations to stand as their candidate for the Fermanagh and South Tyrone constituency. She's been General Secretary and Chief Executive of the Royal College of Nursing, RCN, since 2021, and led the trade union into nationwide strike action. Ms. Cullen said she had informed the RCN her name will go forward to a Sinn Féin selection convention in the constituency this week. After much consideration, I have decided that now is the right time for me to step forward into the political arena to champion the issues and opportunities for the community I love, and that is what I am fully determined to do. She added that the election on the 4th of July was an opportunity to support better funding for public services and reject years of cruel Tory cuts. Miss Cullen grew up in County Tyrone in Northern Ireland and qualified as a registered nurse in 1985. She has held senior roles within nursing, including Director of Nursing at Public Health Agency. Miss Cullen joined the RCN in 2016 and became its Northern Ireland Director in 2019, before being appointed as General Secretary and Chief Executive in 2021. Her name and profile were removed from the RCN website on Wednesday morning following her announcement. Last week, Sinn Féin confirmed sitting MP Rochelle Gilder-New would not be standing again in the Fermanagh and South Tyrone constituency. She's currently seeking election to the European Parliament in the Midlands North West constituency in the Republic of Ireland. In the last Westminster election in 2019, Miss Gilder-New retained the marginal seat with just 57 votes between her and Ulster Unionist Party candidate Tom Elliott. Fermanagh and South Tyrone is the most marginal seat in the UK as of the 2019 general election results. The deadline for candidates to submit nominations forms in Northern Ireland to stand in the general election is Friday, the 7th of June. Just like the summer election announcement, Pat Killen seeking to become a Sinn Féin MP has caught many by surprise. The head of a nursing union with Royal in its name, joining an Irish Republican party is eye-catching in itself. But as the face of nationwide strike action in recent years, she is also a high-profile addition to this race. Last time, Sinn Féin won the Fermanagh and South Tyrone seat by just 57 votes. With so few ballots making the difference, the party may want all the candidate name recognition it can get. The Conservatives have promised to scrap some university courses in England to help fund 100,000 apprenticeships per year if they win the July election. The party says it would replace the worst performing degrees that it considers a rip-off because of high dropout rates and poor job prospects. Labour criticised the government over the decline in the new apprentices. It said it would prioritise gearing apprenticeships towards younger people. The Liberal Democrats said the government had treated apprentices like second-class workers. The Conservatives said former Labour Prime Minister Tony Blair's ambition to get half of young people going to university had led to low-value degrees ballooning. In England, the Office for Students, OFS, had already investigated and sanctioned a university, for example, with fines if it falls below certain standards. The Conservatives say they would introduce a new law allowing the independent regulator to go further and completely close the poorest performing university courses. They would be determined by dropout rates, job progression and future earnings potential, the party said in a press release. Speaking at a railway depot in Cornwall on Wednesday, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak added, "University is great and it makes a fantastic option for young people, but it's not the only option. And what we do know is that there are university degrees that are letting young people down." Speaking to BBC Radio 4's Today programme, Schools Minister Damien Hines said that there had been a huge increase in quality in apprenticeships under Conservative governments. Now was the time to make sure we're maximising the available opportunities for younger people and supporting businesses with the new scheme. Asked about the higher number of people dropping out of an apprenticeship before finishing it, he said it is true that some young people start an apprenticeship and then they don't finish it, and then they take a different turn in their career. When they do that, they've accumulated, of course, skills and experience in that job and they've been earning. That has long been true in apprenticeships. He said it would not be right or fair on current students to say in which courses his party considered to be rip-off degrees, and said it varied by individual courses rather than by subject. Take computer science. You get earnings outcomes from young people studying computer science degrees, which will range from £18,000 to £80,000. Last July, the government announced plans to ask the OFS to cap student numbers on courses that were failing to deliver good outcomes for students. The Conservative Party estimated that the government could save £910 million by 2030 if it scrapped courses that taught 13% of students. It said this was because the taxpayer offsets student loans when graduates do not earn enough money to pay them back. The logic here is that removing courses that lead to lower earnings would result in less unpaid debt. Chloe Field from the National Union of Students said using earnings to measure the value of degrees was a poor metric because things like race, class, gender and disability have a much more significant impact on people's wages. The Conservatives' calculations are based on the assumption that 75% of students who would have enrolled on these courses would go into employment or apprenticeships instead. However, there is no limit on the overall number of students that universities in England are able to admit. So universities could recruit students on to other degree courses if some were closed. The Conservatives said its savings would allow the government to spend £885 million on creating 100,000 more apprentices per year by the end of the next Parliament. The Association of Employment and Learning Providers welcomed the announcement. It said it hoped other political parties would match this additional funding. Chief Executive Ben Rowland said, whichever party finds itself in government, there will need to be a commitment to encouraging more employers to offer apprenticeship opportunities. Neil Carberry, Chief Executive of the Recruitment and Employment Confederation trade body, said that the announcement was using apprenticeships to denigrate university courses when we need both to flourish if we're going to grow. Apprenticeships are funded partly by the apprenticeship levy, which is essentially a tax paid by bigger businesses. Those firms, as well as smaller ones, can access the cash to spend exclusively on training apprentices. Mr. Carberry said the levy makes apprenticeships more expensive to deliver, particularly lower-level apprenticeships aimed at young people, so firms are better off if they do fewer of them. He said that while higher-level apprenticeships are replacing degrees for some people, they do not help people who would not have gone to university and need a different route to skilled work. Rachel Hewitt, Chief Executive at Million Plus, the Association for Modern Universities, said that while apprenticeships are an important part of the skills landscape, they did not need to be pitted in opposition to higher education. Modern universities across the country already deliver excellent degree apprenticeships which combine degree-level study and industry experience, meaning that students can earn as they learn. Labour's Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson said the announcement was laughable because the Conservatives had presided over halving apprenticeships for young people. She reiterated her party's promises to introduce technical excellence colleges aimed at training workers for local industries and to reform the apprenticeship levy into a growth and skills levy, which the party says would allow businesses to spend up to half of their levy payments on more flexible training courses. Manira Wilson, education spokeswoman for the Liberal Democrats, said the Conservatives had broken the apprenticeship system and urgent reform is needed. The shockingly low pay for those on apprenticeships will remain, doing nothing to encourage more people to take apprenticeships up or tackle soaring dropout rates. There are no UK-wide figures for the number of apprentices, but the number has fallen over time in England. Total new apprentices fell from 509,400 in 2015 to 16 to 321,400 in 2020 to 2021. It has risen slightly since the pandemic, reaching 337,100 in 2022 to 2023. The government has said it wants more young people to start apprenticeships. Last year, 23% of new apprentices were under 19. Overall, the number of young people starting apprenticeships fell from 131,400 in 2015 to 2016 to 65,200 in 2020 to 2021, rising to 77,700 in 2022 to 2023. Dropout rates in England are about 1 in 2. Just over half, 54.6% of apprentices completed and passed a final assessment in 2022 and 2023, well below the government's 67% target by the end of 2024 to 2025. Junior doctors in England are to stage a 5-day strike in the lead-up to the election in their long-running pay dispute with the government. British Medical Association BMA members will walk out from 7 a.m. British Standard Time on the 27th of June, a week before Election Day. The union said it was taking action as there had been no credible new offer after fresh talks started in mid-May. But ministers accused the BMA of cynical tactics for calling a walkout during the election campaign. The BMA has asked for a 35% pay rise to make up for what it says is 15 years of below-inflation pay rises. Junior doctors received a pay rise averaging nearly 9% in the last financial year. The BMA walked out talks last year, during which an extra 3% pay rise on top was discussed. This will be the 11th walkout by junior doctors in this dispute after their first strike in March 2023. The last one took place in February. It will see junior doctors walk out of all services, with senior doctors having to be drafted in to provide cover. That will cause huge disruptions to elective services such as routine operations days before the general election. Junior doctors represent nearly half the doctor workforce in the NHS, with 2/3 members of the BMA. BMA Junior Doctors Committee co-chairs Dr. Robert Lawrenson and Dr. Vivek Trivedi said, "We made clear to the government that we would strike unless discussions ended in a pay offer. For more than 18 months, we've been asking Rishi Sunak to put forward proposals to restore the pay junior doctors have lost over the past 15 years. They added, when we entered mediation with government this month, we did so under the impression that we had a functioning government that would soon be making an offer. Clearly, no offer is now forthcoming. Junior doctors are fed up and out of patience. Even at this late stage, Mr. Sunak has the opportunity to show that he cares about the NHS and its workers. Health Secretary Victoria Atkins accused the BMA of a highly cynical tactic by calling the strike during the election campaign. I'm in politics to help patients, not trade unions. Conservative government has taken two tough decisions to keep public spending down to bear down on inflation, which is now back to normal. Strike action by junior doctors has also been taking place in Northern Ireland, with another walkout planned in early June. Walkouts in Wales are on hold as talks take place. Junior doctors have not been on strike in Scotland after they accepted a pay offer from the government there. Stephen Cordery, Deputy Chief Executive at NHS Providers, which represents hospitals, said the news of fresh strike action was a worrying escalation of disputes. This strike will inevitably hit patients hard. As always, trust leaders and their teams will do everything they can to protect patient safety. They will spend countless hours preparing for the walkout, which includes counselling and rescheduling appointments. This is time they would prefer to spend improving patient care and tackling sky-high waiting lists. Nearly 1.5 million appointments and operations have been cancelled because of strike action in the NHS in England at an estimated cost of £3 billion. Consultants, nurses and midwives, alongside other non-medical staff, have all accepted pay offers over the past 12 months in England. The Evening Standard newspaper has announced plans to drop its daily print edition and go weekly. The London paper launched in its original incarnation in 1827 and became free of charge in 2009. An email to staff on Wednesday said more home working and the availability of Wi-Fi on the tube were among the factors that had harmed its fortunes. It said a proposed new weekly newspaper would replace the daily publication. The paper's circulation has dropped from 850,000 to 250,000 in the past 5 years, and it has lost £84.5 million over the latest 6 years. There has been speculation about its future for some time. The paper's forerunner, named Standard, launched 97 years ago, with an evening version added in 1859. The Evening Standard was bought by businessman and former Russian agent Alexander Lebedev and his son Evgeny in 2009. When they took over, the circulation shot up from about 250,000 after they decided to make it free and rely on the income from advertising instead of cover price. Despite remaining free, the circulation has dropped back to around 2009 levels. Last year, Bloomberg reported that new Standard editor, Dylan Jones, said he took the job on the condition that its owners didn't shut down the print edition. However, earlier this month, he admitted that he never read a print newspaper, according to the Press Gazette. The Lebedevs also bought The Independent in 2010 and scrapped that paper's The Print edition entirely 6 years later. Wednesday's email to Standard staff said, although this process may be unsettling, the goal is to replicate our previous success with our sister title, The Independent, which has seen enduring growth in readership and commercial success following its own strategic transition in 2016. 12 million people access the Standard's digital platforms every month, with half of that traffic coming from outside London and overseas. It added that a new commercial approach would reinforce the relationship between our 24/7 digital platforms and our weekly publications. This new combination would place more emphasis on delivering our world-class content to the broadest readership possible, while collaborating with advertisers to reach this audience in the most accessible, creative, and relevant manner. The company has yet to give any details of any job losses. The first head-to-head general election debate will be hosted by ITV next week, the broadcaster has confirmed. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak and Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer will face each other on Tuesday the 4th of June at 9 p.m. British Standard Time. The hour-long programme titled Sunak vs Starmer, the ITV debate, will be moderated by presenter Julie Etchingham, who also hosted debates in 2015, 2017 and 2019. ITV said it also planned to broadcast an interview programme with other party leaders and a multi-party debate. The head-to-head debate between Mr Sunak and Sir Keir will take place in front of a live audience. Michael Jeremy, ITV's Director of News and Current Affairs, said that millions of viewers value the election debates. They provide a chance to see and hear the party leaders set out a pitch to the country, debate directly with each other, and take questions from voters. ITV is pleased to be broadcasting the first debate in this year's election campaign. Other broadcasters such as the BBC, Channel 4 and Sky News have not yet announced plans for any debates. However, it is widely expected that there will be at least one more head-to-head debate between the two main leaders for the election on the 4th of July. The BBC confirmed on Tuesday that Clive Myrie and Laura Kuenssberg will host its election night coverage. Channel 4's election night coverage team will include Rory Stewart, Alistair Campbell and Emily Maitlis, while Kay Burley will anchor Sky News election results broadcast. A rail enthusiast has bought a 1970s train for £1 in a bid to save it from the scrap heap. Robert Hampton, aged 41, now hopes to raise £10,000 to move the Merseyrail Class 507 train to a museum. The IT consultant said he had fond memories of day trips on the old trains and wanted to save a piece of Merseyside's history. The Class 507 trains, first introduced in 1978, being replaced by the Class 777 fleet. The Class 507 trains are our trains, he said. Lots of trains work all across the country, but the 507 has only ever worked on the Merseyrail network. Mr. Hampton said he had a sentimental attachment to the fleet and had always associated them with summer holidays, day outs. It was always a treat to go on these trains. They have had a great deal of character. They are representative of 1970s technology. The train Mr. Hampton has bought is the first of the fleet, the 507001, which he says has a special place in railway history. Not only is it the first of its class and thus the oldest still in service, but it also served as a royal train. On the 25th of October 1978, Queen Elizabeth II unveiled the plaque at Moorfields Station to open the Merseyrail network, before travelling on the 507001 to Kirkby. The 507001 was recently restored to British Rail, blue and grey livery to commemorate its long service, which Mr. Hampton said has made it something of a celebrity among rail enthusiasts. The Class 507s were built by British Rail Engineering Limited at Holgate Road Works, York. A number of them have already been scrapped, with the rest to be scrapped within the next 12 months. After setting up the Class 507 Preservation Society, Mr. Hampton approached the Angel Trains with this idea and secured a deal for a nominal £1. He will take ownership of the train in the summer when it is retired. Mr. Hampton has found a home for the unit at the Thanet Valley Railway in north-west Shropshire, but the unit must be moved by road, which will cost in the region of £10,000. Mr. Hampton has launched a crowdfunding campaign. He said he hoped the train could become an educational exhibit in its new home. Mark Hignett from the Nant Mountain Visitor Centre said, "I'm thrilled that a train that carried Elizabeth II is coming into Moor. The area has many historic connections with Liverpool, and lots of the city's water comes from Lake Burn, which is just 20 miles away from us. We look forward to hosting this very special train." An Angel Trains spokesman said Angel Trains is proud to support the Class 507 Preservation Society and has donated the Class 507001 to them. We look forward to seeing Class 507's contribution to the Liverpool City Region's railway history celebrated for generations to come. A Liverpool City Region Combined Authority spokesman said that the authority wished the group well with its campaign. Undisputed heavyweight champion Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury are set to meet in a rematch on the 21st of December, according to the chairman of Saudi Arabia's General Entertainment Authority. Usyk beat Fury by a split decision to become the first undisputed champion of the full belt era on the 18th of May. The rematch was said to be in the works for October, but Turki Al-Aksi says the date has been pushed back to December. The world will watch another historical fight again, Anas added on X. Our commitment is boxing to boxing fans. As it continues, we hope you enjoy it. Usyk, the first undisputed heavyweight champion since Lennox Lewis in 1999, added Fury's WBC belt to his WBA/WBIBF collection when they fought in Riyadh, Saudi Arabia earlier this month. 37-year-old Ukrainian has won all 22 of his professional fights. Alex did not name a venue or destination for the rematch, stated it would take place during Riyadh season. Riyadh season is an entertainment festival held every winter since its launch in 2019, which has hosted a number of high-profile boxing events. The contest would give Britain Fury 35 the opportunity to gain revenge after tasting defeat for the first time in his 16-year professional career against Usyk. It is unlikely that all four belts will be on the line in the rematch, with the IBF planning to strip Usyk as he will not be facing its mandatory challenger next. Usyk and Fury had agreed a two-fight deal, but there was still some doubts as to whether the rematch would happen. But if Alex says it's happening, then it usually is. So you can start preparing yourself for a Christmas cracker in Saudi. The first contest lived up the pre-fight hype, Pundits predicted a dull technical battle, but instead we got a dramatic back-and-forth encounter. Usyk is one of the smartest fighters in the history of the sport. His ability to read a fight and adapt accordingly is staggering. Having already shared 12 rounds with Fury, he will be looking for a more dominant win. Fury appeared to be in control during the first half of the bout and will feel that with the right adjustments, he can become a 3-time world champion. If Usyk is forced to vacate the IBF title, promoter Eddie Hearn has suggested the winner of Filip Hrgovic and Daniel Dubois, who fight in the Riyadh on Saturday, could face Anthony Joshua for the vacant belt in September at Wembley Stadium. If Fury beats Usyk and Joshua wins the IBF belt, could we see Fury AJ for all of the titles in 2025? The board of the company that owns Royal Mail has agreed to a formal takeover offer for the 500-year-old organisation. Czech billionaire Daniel Kretinsky has confirmed an offer of £5 billion, including assumed debts for the company, which employs more than 150,000 people. The entrepreneur said he had the utmost respect for its history and tradition. The offer includes commitments to retain the name, brand, UK headquarters, and UK tax residency, as well as protections for employee benefits and pensions. Business Secretary Kemi Badenoch, who has yet to meet Mr. Kretinsky, has the power under the National Security and Investment Act to scrutinise and potentially block the deal. Markets seems to think there is a chance the deal will be blocked by the current or any future government, as the shares in Royal Mail's parent company are trading at a discount to the 370 pence a share being offered by Kretinsky. However, others point to the fact that the government did not intervene at a time it could have done so in 2022, when the entrepreneur raised his stake from 22% to the 27.5% shares he already owns. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has said that any takeover bid for Britain's Royal Mail would be subject to normal national security scrutiny, but it would not be opposed in principle. Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds wrote to Mr. Kretinsky 2 weeks ago to stress the historic and crucial role that Royal Mail played in the life and economy of the UK, spitting out undertakings that Mr. Kretinsky's offer should entail. In an update to investors on Wednesday, Mr. Kretinsky said, "I know that owning this business will come with enormous responsibility, not just to the employees, but to the citizens who rely on its services every day. The scale of the commitments we are offering to the company and the UK government reflect how seriously we take this responsibility to the benefit of IDS, employees, union representatives, and all other stakeholders. Royal Mail, which was split from the Post Office and privatised a decade ago, is legally obliged to deliver a one-price-goes-anywhere universal service, which means it has to deliver letters 6 days per week, Monday to Saturday, and parcels Monday to Friday. But the company's performance in recent years has deteriorated, leading to heavy financial losses, with customers regularly not receiving letters, including important medical appointments and legal documents on time. Parent company International Distribution Services, IDS, made a small profit last year, which was entirely generated by its German and Canadian logistics and parcels business, offsetting losses at Royal Mail. The volume of letters being posted has plummeted, with half the number being sent compared to 2011 levels. Meanwhile, parcel deliveries have become more popular and more profitable. The universal service obligation is under review, with Royal Mail suggesting to Ofcom that reducing second-class deliveries to every other weekday would save up to £300 million a year and give the business a fighting chance. The firm offer, including various commitments around services and the company itself, including maintaining the one price goes anywhere universal service and not to raid the pension surplus, keeping the brand name and Royal Mail's headquarters and tax residency in the UK, and a promise to respect the union's demands for no compulsory redundancies until 2025, and negotiating with the Communication Workers Union at CWU to extend that commitment. On Wednesday, Keith Williams, the chair of IDS, said its board had negotiated a far-reaching package of legally binding undertakings and commitments which provide our customers, employees and broader stakeholders with important safeguards. He said the board believed the offer from Mr. Kretinsky's EP Group was fair and reasonable given there may be uncertainties ahead of business. Dave Ward, General Secretary of the CWU, which represents postal workers, told the BBC's Today programme they would like more extensive assurance about the future of the UK Postal Service. I think it's about testing Mr. Kretinsky as to whether he's got any plans for investing in the workforces, investing in a growth strategy of the company, or whether his intentions are purely to asset strip the company. The CWU will also be directly engaging with Labour and others to call for a new model of ownership for Royal Mail, where it hopes its members would have a direct say in its key decisions. On Wednesday, the Shadow Business Secretary said that Labour would take the necessary steps to protect Royal Mail's undeniable identity and place in public life. There are still, however, several stages to go before any takeover would become fully binding. Shareholders will vote on the deal at IDS's next annual general meeting in September. Mr. Kretinsky made his fortune in the energy industry, but has in recent years diversified his interests into retail and logistics. He owns 10% of Sainsbury's and 27% of West Ham Football Club. The BBC understands that the Department of Business and Trade would expect any bidder for the Royal Mail Group to engage ministers. Who is Daniel Kretinsky? Daniel Kretinsky, the would-be owner of the Royal Mail, has all the trappings of the modern-day billionaire. The 48-year-old Czech businessman and lawyer is worth a cool £6 billion, according to the Sunday Times Rich List. He owns fancy houses in upmarket areas. These include Heath Hall on London's Bishop Avenue, aka Billionaire's Row, which he bought for £65 million, and once rented to pop star Justin Bieber for a reputed £25,000 a week. He also spent €21.5 million, or £18.3 million, buying a Parisian townhouse down the road from Elysee Palace from Russian oligarch and fertilizer magnate Dmitry Robolev and his ex-wife. Mr. Kretinsky also owns a share of the Vala private island resort in the Maldives, and like others in his wealth bracket, he has a football club too. These include AC Sparta Prague, as well as Britain's own West Ham, in which he owns a 27% stake. Apparently known as the Quiet Sphinx for his unscrutable style, what's to say about Mr. Kretinsky is that he made his money in Central and Eastern European energy via a labyrinthine structure of companies. This includes Eurostream, which transports Russian gas via pipelines that run through Ukraine, the Czech Republic and Slovakia. In the UK, Mr. Kretinsky has built up quite a portfolio in well-known brands through Visa Equity Investment, a private firm which is registered in Luxembourg. These include sizable stakes in supermarket group Sainsbury's and the sportswear retailer Foot Locker, as well as international distribution services, the parent company of Royal Mail. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has denied Diane Abbott has been barred from standing for the party. Sir Keir said the ex-Shadow Home Secretary's suspension from the party had been lifted, but no decision had been taken on whether she could be a Labour candidate at the election. Earlier, Miss Abbott has said that she had been barred from standing for Labour. She was suspended last year for saying that Jewish, Irish and Traveller people do not face racism all their lives. On Tuesday, it was revealed her suspension had been lifted following an investigation. Labour has not yet said who its candidate will be in the North and Stoke Newington seat, which had a Labour majority of more than 33,000 at the last election. The party is currently selecting remaining candidates ahead of a meeting to endorse them next week before nominations legally close on the 7th of June. Reports that Miss Abbott has been banned from standing for Labour first emerged on Tuesday evening, with the MP saying this was correct the following morning. Labour had not denied the reports, but asked about Miss Abbott's claims she had been at campaign visit in Worcester. Later on Wednesday, Sir Keir said, "No, that's not true. No decision has been taken to bar Diane Abbott." It is unclear if his comments are a statement of technical fact. No formal decision about her candidacy will be made until Labour's National Executive meets next week, or a shift in the direction of travel. In a post on X earlier, Miss Abbott said she was delighted to have been readmitted to the parliamentary party. "I'll be campaigning for a Labour victory," she said, "but I am very dismayed that numerous reports suggest I have been barred as a candidate." A spokesperson for left-wing campaign group Momentum said, "We are sickened and disgusted by this news. The way Keir Starmer has treated Britain's first black woman MP is appalling, vindictive and cruel." 6 unions, ASLEF, the TSSA, Unite, the NUM, the Communication Workers Union and the Fire Brigades Union, have also called for Miss Abbott to be confirmed as the Labour candidate for Hackney North and Stoke Newington. Labour launched an investigation in April last year after Miss Abbott wrote in The Observer that Irish, Jewish and Traveller people undoubtedly experience prejudice, which she said is similar to racism. The letter added it is true that many types of white people with points of difference, such as redheads, can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. Miss Abbott apologised and withdrew her remarks shortly after they were published. It was BBC Newsnight who revealed earlier the party's investigation had been completed in December 2023. Labour's National Executive Committee, NEC, issued her with a formal warning for engaging in conduct that was, in the opinion of the NEC, prejudicial and grossly detrimental to the Labour Party. It said it expected her to undertake an online e-learning module, which a source said was a 2-hour anti-Semitism awareness course. Ms Abbott did the module in February, after which it is understood she received an email from Labour's chief whip acknowledging that she had completed it. However, as recently as Friday, Sir Keir had been saying the investigation into her comments was not resolved. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said Labour needed to clear up this issue. The Labour Party has been telling everybody this investigation into Diane Abbott is ongoing. It now appears it concluded months ago. The Scottish National Party said Sir Keir's treatment of Miss Abbott was disgraceful and shows a total lack of judgment. Who is Diane Abbott? First black woman to be elected to Parliament in 1987 as MP for Hackney North and Stoke Newington in East London. After a long career on the backbenches, she was promoted to Ed Miliband's front bench following her unsuccessful bid to become Labour leader in 2010. Previously held the post of Shadow International Development Secretary and Shadow Health Secretary. A close ally of former Labour leader Jeremy Corbyn, she was appointed as his Shadow Home Secretary in 2016, a position she held until 2020. Meanwhile, former Labour MP Graham Jones, who was suspended from the party in February over comments he allegedly made about Israel, also said that this has now been lifted. Mr Jones had been selected as Labour's candidate to hold his seat he previously held until 2019, but it is not clear if he has been reinstated for the upcoming election. Mr Corbyn, who was suspended as a Labour MP in 2020 for saying the scale of anti-Semitism within Labour's ranks had been dramatically overstated by his opponents, has confirmed he will stand against the party. He will contest Islington North, which he has held since 1983, as an independent candidate. Former WeWork boss Adam Newman said he is moving on after trying to buy the bankrupt company that specialises in shared office spaces. Mr Newman had revealed his interest in buying the firm earlier this year, reportedly offering a sum of $500 million, £391 million. At the time, he accused the firm of resisting the idea despite its financial issues. WeWork recently submitted a plan to emerge from bankruptcy, which it said would help reduce its rent burden by billions of dollars. In a statement on Tuesday, Mr Newman, who now leads a new property firm called Flow, criticised his former company's plans. For several months, we tried to work constructively with WeWork to create a strategy would allow it to thrive, he said in the statement, which was first reported by the New York Times. Instead, the company looks to be emerging from bankruptcy with a plan that appears unrealistic and unlikely to succeed. Mr Newman made his name steering WeWork on a breakneck global expansion, which he promised would revolutionise the office property sector, but the growth proved too costly to sustain, leaving the firm with multi-billion-dollar losses. Mr Newman was ousted in 2019 after his effort to list the company on the stock exchange revealed cracks in its business model and drew scrutiny of its leadership. His false race was later portrayed in the Apple TV series We Crashed. Mr Newman, whose exit from WeWork was accompanied by a significant payout, soon bounced back, winning backing from famous Silicon Valley venture capitalist firm Andreessen Horowitz for his new company. But WeWork, once privately valued at nearly $50 billion, £39 million, and hailed as the future of the office, continued to struggle, especially after the pandemic shut down offices and gave rise to remote work, often from home. It filed for bankruptcy last November, seeking court protection as it tried to reduce its rent burden. Microsoft has torn up the rules of big video game launches by announcing its most eagerly awaited new title, Call of Duty Black Ops 6, will be available straight away to subscribers of its Game Pass service. Traditionally, gamers have had to hand over significant sums of money up front to buy big new releases outright. With the latest edition of Call of Duty, they will now have the option to pay a much smaller monthly subscription instead. Games industry biz head Christopher Dring has said it was a significant move for Microsoft and the industry. The tech giant has previously made games available to Game Pass subscribers on launch day, such as 2023's much-anticipated Starfield, but has never done so with a release anywhere near as significant as Call of Duty. It is the fourth best-selling game series in history, topping 425 million lifetime sales and making tens of billions of dollars in the process. It is arguably the jewel in the crown of developer Activision Blizzard, which Microsoft controversially bought for a colossal $69 billion, then £56 billion in 2023. But rather than stick with a tried and tested model for selling it, Microsoft is gambling on a new approach. Call of Duty is by far the biggest game to go into a subscription service on the day it is released. It is a big test for subscription, because if Call of Duty can't move the needle in terms of subscriber numbers, probably nothing will. Game Pass, much like Sony's rival PlayStation Plus service, lets console and PC players play hundreds of video games for a monthly subscription fee. Both have been described as a Netflix for games, but with the caveat that gamers can download many of the games available to play on their own hardware rather than streaming over the cloud. They are extremely popular services, with Sony saying PlayStation Plus had 47 million subscribers in March 2023, while Microsoft said Game Pass had 34 million subscribers as of February 2024. But that means unless something changes between now and Call of Duty's launch, which does not yet have a release date, not one of 34 million Game Pass subscribers will have to pay anything extra to play the new game. This means Microsoft is taking a huge gamble, choosing to potentially cannibalize sales in exchange for it hopes a sharp increase to Game Pass subscribers. Mr. String said the move probably came down to an inherent problem with game streaming services. People simply don't play as many games as they watch TV shows, so it can't be hard to justify paying to play one or two titles. But with the addition of such a big game to the service, he said that there may yet be changes coming to make the numbers work. It'll be interesting to see whether Xbox will introduce higher tiers to Game Pass or other monetization techniques to mitigate this. One element which is unclear in this Microsoft announcement is whether gamers will be allowed to stream the new Call of Duty game, or if they'll be forced to download it. That's because when Microsoft purchased Activision, it had to make concessions to deal with the attention of regulators worldwide. In order to get the deal past UK regulators in particular, Microsoft agreed to give French game publisher Ubisoft the rights to distribute Activision's games on the consoles and PCs. That means cloud streaming rights are decided by Ubisoft, so it may not be available for streaming when it launches. It also means that the new Call of Duty game may ultimately appear on rival streaming platforms down the line. But the specifics of the deal are unknown, and it's highly unlikely PlayStation gamers will get to stream the game on the day of its release. Early investigations into severe turbulence that hit a Singapore Airlines flight last Tuesday revealed it dropped around 178 feet or 54 meters over 0.6 seconds. One British passenger died and dozens more were injured when the London-Singapore flight encountered the turbulence over Myanmar and was diverted to Thailand. Singaporean investigators have extracted data stored in the flight's data recorder and cockpit voice recorder of the aircraft. Singapore Airlines said it was cooperating with investigators and supporting affected passengers and crew, including with medical and hospital expenses. The Transport Safety Investigation Bureau's TSIB preliminary findings found rapid changes in gravitational force and the altitude drop, a distance almost equivalent to the height of Italy's leaning tower Pisa, likely injured those who were not wearing seatbelts. It said the flight operated as normal until it probably flew over an area of developing convective activity while passing over the south of Myanmar, 37,000 feet, or 11,300 meters. The rapid changes in G over 4.6 seconds durations resulted in an altitude drop of 178 feet, or 54 meters, from 37,362 feet to 37,184 feet, the TSIB report said. This sequence of events likely caused injuries to crew and passengers. After the pilots were informed by the cabin crew that there were being injured passengers in the cabin, the decision was made to divert to Suvarnabhumi Airport, Bangkok, Thailand. Approximately 17 minutes after the turbulence event, the pilots were able to make a controlled descent from 37,000 feet, report added. The aircraft did not encounter any more severe turbulence during its diversion to Bangkok. The pilots also requested for medical services to meet the aircraft on arrival. The TSIB, which operates under Singapore's Transport Ministry, said its investigations were ongoing. There were 211 passengers and 18 crew on board the Boeing 777-300 ER aircraft, according to Singapore Airlines. Jeff Kitchen, aged 73, died from a suspected heart attack on board, while 104 other passengers were taken to Bangkok's Samatibed Hospital for treatment. Ali Bakari, aged 27, who was seated with his wife Ramiza, said that the aircraft went into straight freefall. It was terrifying. It's just like going down a vertical roller coaster. Oxygen masks had all come out. Parts of the interior of the plane were damaged. I thought that was from the force of the turbulence, but a lot of it was just because everyone who wasn't wearing a seatbelt flew right into the air and hit the ceiling. We saw blood on the ceiling. It was just complete havoc. A lot of people were on the floor. Singapore Airlines said it was committed to supporting crew members and passengers who were on board at Tuesday's flight. This includes covering their medical and hospital expenses, as well as any additional assistance they may need, the airline said on social media. The safety and well-being of our passengers and staff are our top priorities. We deeply appreciate the valuable assistance provided by the governments of Singapore and Thailand, as well as our many partners and the medical teams in both countries and around the world. Last Thursday, the director of Samatam Sri Nako Hospital said that staff initially treated 6 people for skull and brain injuries, 22 for spinal injuries, and 13 for bone, muscle, and other injuries. We have never treated people with these kind of injuries caused by turbulence, Adnan Kiratana Paibul told reporters. As of Wednesday, 42 passengers who were on the flight were still in Bangkok, according to Singapore Airlines, of which 26 were in a hospital receiving medical treatment. Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves has promised that there will be no additional tax rises beyond those she has set out if Labour wins the general election. In her first major speech of the election campaign, Ms Reeves said that every Labour policy will be fully funded and fully costed, no ifs, no ands and no buts. But the Institute of Fiscal Studies, IFS, an independent think tank, has warned that whoever wins may have to raise taxes or cut spending. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak claimed that Labour's plans will cost every working family £2,000 each. Speaking at the engineering giant Rolls-Royce in Derby, Ms Reeves reiterated Labour's plans to recruit thousands of additional teachers and introduce 40,000 NHS appointments every week. She said that Labour's plan to restore stability to the economy would be underpinned by robust fiscal rules, which are self-imposed, such as getting debt falling as a share of national income by the end of the Parliament. However, the IFS has said that the state of public finances hangs over the election campaign like a dark cloud, and the winning party may have to reduce spending or lift taxes, something that Ms Reeves ruled out Tuesday. The Shadow Chancellor said that she wants to lower taxes and increase the thresholds for those people who pay income tax. Income tax thresholds have been frozen since 2021. This can mean that if a person pay increases, they may enter a higher tax bracket. Ms Reeves has said, I want to bring taxes down and I want those tax thresholds to go up so people are not having to pay so much tax on their income. But unlike the Conservatives, I'm not going to make a promise and a pledge without being able to say where the money is coming from, because that is just a gimmick. If Labour wins the election, it is unlikely there will be a budget for September. Ms Reeves said that Labour would not hold a budget without an independent forecast by the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, and these require 10 weeks' notice. Ms Reeves used her speech to cast Labour as the natural partner of visitors. She said, a few years ago, you might not have expected to have heard these things from the Labour Party. Think how far we've come in 4 short years. On Tuesday, 121 former and current business leaders signed a letter endorsing the Labour's economic plans ahead of the general election, saying it is time for a change. In a letter published in the Times newspaper on Tuesday, 121 founders, chief executives and former leaders at a range of financial services, retail and manufacturing firms said Labour has changed and wants to work with business on long-term growth. As well as recruiting more teachers and providing extra NHS appointments, Labour has promised to take on 13,000 additional police and community officers. It said it will raise some of the money by ending the VAT exemption for private schools. Labour also said it will fund its spending plans through a proper windfall tax on profits made by oil and gas companies, which will rise from 75% to 78%. In addition, it has promised to raise £5 billion a year by tackling tax avoidance and evasion, and £2.6 billion by closing loopholes. In the government's plans to abolish non-dom exemptions, non-doms are UK residents whose home for tax purposes is abroad, meaning they do not have to pay UK tax on money they earn overseas. Ms Reeves reiterated that corporation tax, which is paid by businesses, will be capped at the current rate of 25%, but she added that Labour would act if our competitiveness came under threat. Work and Pensions Secretary Mel Stride said that Labour do not have the courage or conviction to name a single tax they would cut. Over the weekend, the Conservatives said they would increase the tax-free pension allowance. Both the Conservatives and Labour have pledged to stick with the so-called triple lock guarantee. This means that pensions increase every year in line with either the inflation rate, earnings growth, or 2.5%, whichever is higher. Ms Reeves said, I want to bring taxes down for working people and for pensions as well, but I will do that in a costed and funded way, and I will do that through a growing economy, because that is something the Conservatives haven't been able to do, at least for the last 2 years. But Mr Stride said only Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives have a clear plan backed by bold action, to end the double tax on work and ensure pensioners who have worked hard their entire lives will have a new tax-free threshold to protect them. The Lib Dems said news that businesses are crying out for stability and certainty after years of Conservatives' chaos and mismanagement. The Liberal Democrats would launch an industrial strategy to boost investment and reform the broken business rate system to support our high streets. The Green Party of England and Wales said it would invest in the technologies we need to ensure a sustainable and secure future. We need to ensure our economy works in a way that safeguards our climate and enables nature to flourish. The Scottish National Party's Drew Hendry accused Labour of ignoring the most fundamental reason for the economic decline of the United Kingdom. Britain is broken and Brexit broke it, adding only the SNP fight for a future back at the European Union. Plaid Cymru Cymru Treasury spokesman Ben Lake said his party would invest in the Welsh economy to drive growth and reduce inequality. Very few people are regularly using a much hyped artificial intelligence products like ChatGPT, a survey suggests. Researchers surveyed 12,000 people in 6 countries, including the UK, which only 2% of British respondents saying they use such tools on a daily basis. But the study from Reuters Institute and Oxford University says young people are bucking the trend, with 18 to 24-year-olds the most eager adopters of the tech. Dr. Richard Fletcher, the report's lead author, has said there was a mismatch between the hype around AI and the public interest in it. The study examined views on generative AI tools, the new generation of products that can respond to simple text prompts with human-sounding answers as well as images, audio, and video. Generative AI burst into the public consciousness when ChatGPT was launched in November 2022. The attention OpenAI's chatbot attracted set off an almighty arms race among tech firms who ever since have been pouring billions of dollars into developing their own generative AI features. What is AI? However, this research indicates that if for all the money and attention lavished on generative AI, it is yet to become part of people's routine internet use. Large parts of the public are not particularly interested in generative AI, and 30% of people in the UK say they have not heard of any of the most prominent products, including ChatGPT. The new generation of AI products has also sparked an intense public debate about whether they will have a positive or negative impact. Predicted outcomes have ranged from the optimists from boosted economic growth to the discovery of new life-saving drugs. The pessimists, meanwhile, have gone so far as to suggest the tech is a threat to humanity itself. This research attempted to gauge what the public thinks, finding the majority expects generative AI to have a large impact on society in the next 5 years, particularly for news, media, and science. Most said they think generative AI will make their own lives better, and when asked whether generative AI will make society as a whole better or worse, people were generally more pessimistic. People's hopes and fears for generative AI vary a lot depending on the sector. People are generally optimistic about the use of generative AI in science and healthcare, but more wary about it when being used in news and journalism, and worried about the effect it might have on job security. He said the research showed it was important for everyone, including governments and regulators, to apply nuance to the debate about AI. The findings were based on responses to an online questionnaire fielded in 6 countries, consisting of Argentina, Denmark, France, Japan, the UK, and the USA. Sarah needed some hot chocolate. She had one of those days, so wandered into a home bar store. Within less than a minute, I am approached by a store worker who comes up to me and says, "You're a thief, you need to leave the store." Sarah, who wants to remain anonymous, was wrongly accused after being flagged by a facial recognition system called FaceWatch. She says after a bag was searched, she was led out of the shop and told she was banned from all stores using their technology. I was just crying and crying the entire journey home. I thought, oh, will my life be the same? I'm going to be looked at as a shoplifter when I've never stolen. FaceWatch later wrote to Sarah and acknowledged it had made an error. FaceWatch is used in numerous stores in the UK, including Budgens, Sports Direct, and Costa, to identify shoplifters. The company declined to comment on Sarah's case, but did say its technology helped prevent crime and protect frontline workers. Home Bargains too declined to comment. It's not just retailers who are turning to the technology. On a humid day in Bethnal Green in East London, they joined the police as they positioned a modified white van on the high street. Cameras attached to its roof captured thousands of images of people's faces. If they matched people on the police watch list, officers would speak to them and potentially arrest them. Unflattering references to technology liken the process to a supermarket checkout, where your face becomes a barcode. On the day they were filmed, the Metropolitan Police said they made 6 arrests with the assistance of the tech. That included 2 people who breached the terms of their sexual harm prevention orders, a man wanted for grievous bodily harm, and a person wanted for the assault of a police officer. Lindsay Chiswick, Director of Intelligence for the Met, has said the tech speed was extremely helpful. It takes less than a second for the technology to create a biometric image of a person's face, assess it against a bespoke watch list, and automatically delete it when there is no match. They spoke to several people approached by the police who confirmed that they had been correctly identified by the system. 192 arrests have been made so far this year as a result of it. But civil liberty groups are worried that its accuracy is yet to be fully established and point to cases such as Sean Thompson's. Mr. Thompson, who works for the youth advocacy group Street Fathers, didn't think much of it when he walked by a white van near London Bridge in February. Within a few seconds, though, he was approached by police and told he was a wanted man. That's when I got a nudge on the shoulder saying at that time, "I'm wanted." He was asked to give fingerprints and held for 20 minutes. He said he was let go only after handing over a copy of his passport, but it was a case of mistaken identity. It felt intrusive. I was treated guilty until proven innocent. Silke Carlo, Director of Big Brother Watch, has filmed the police on numerous facial recognition deployments. She was there the night Sean Thompson was picked up by police. My experience observing live facial recognition for many years is that most members of the public don't really know what live facial recognition is. She says that anyone's face who is scanned is effectively part of a digital police lineup. If they trigger a match alert, then the police will come in, possibly detain them and question them and ask them to prove their innocence. The use of facial recognition by the police is ramping up. Between 2020 and 2022, the Metropolitan Police used live facial recognition 9 times. The following year, the figure was 23. Already in 2024, it has been used 67 times, so the direction of travel is clear. Champions say that misidentifications are rare. The Metropolitan Police say that around 1 in every 33,000 people who walk by its cameras is misidentified, but the error count is much higher once someone is actually flagged. 1 in 40 alerts so far this year has been a false positive. Michael Whittle, head of research at the Ada Lovelace Institute Research Group, believes the technology is so new that the laws have not yet caught up. I think it's absolutely a Wild West at the moment. That's what creates the legal uncertainty as to whether current uses are lawful or not. In Bethnal Green, although some people said that they were worried about the use of the tech, a majority was supportive if it helped tackle crime. That leads to another question about the technology. Will it help in the long run? As people get more used to seeing white vans parked on busy high streets, or people who know they are wanted by police simply get wise to the cameras and avoid them, or shoplifters hide their faces. Ms. Carnos says society needs to guard against facial recognition becoming normalised. Once the police can say this is okay, this is something that we can do routinely, why not put it into the fixed camera networks? This is the dystopian future that civil liberty campaigners are most afraid of, a China-style mass surveillance state. Advocates dismiss such dire predictions as overblown, and it is also clear there are plenty among the public who are willing to put up with having their face scanned if it means to save their street. Another former executive of FTX has been jailed over his past in the cryptocurrency giant's implosion in late 2022. Ryan Salam, who was the co-CEO of FTX's Bahamian subsidiary, was sentenced to 90 months in prison, US federal prosecutors said. Salam, who is a top lieutenant to Sam Bankman-Fried, the bankrupt crypto exchange founder, pleaded guilty in September last year to violating political campaign finance laws and operating an illegal money transmitting business. Earlier this year, Bankman-Fried was sentenced to 25 years in prison for stealing $8 billion, £6.3 billion from FTX customers. Salam's involvement in 2 serious federal crimes undermined public trust in American elections and the integrity of the financial system, Damian Williams, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of New York, said in a statement. A jury found Salam guilty in November last year on 7 fraud and conspiracy counts stemming from FTX's failure. Prosecutors have called it one of the biggest financial frauds in U.S. history. Salam's sentence was lower than the 5 to 7 years that prosecutors had sought. In addition to the prison term, he was sentenced to 3 years of supervised release and ordered to pay more than $6 million in forfeiture and more than $5 million in restitution. Salam was one of 4 former top executives from Bankman-Fried's companies, pleaded guilty to charges along with former Alameda Chief Executive Officer Caroline Ellison, former FTX Technology Chief Gary Wang, and former FTX Engineering Chief Nishad Singh. FTX was one of the world's largest crypto exchanges before its demise, turning Bankman-Fried into a business celebrity and attracting millions of customers who used the platform to buy and trade cryptocurrency. Rumours of financial trouble sparked a run on deposits in 2022, precipitating the firm's implosion and exposing Freud's crimes. He was convicted by a New York jury last year of charges including wire fraud and conspiracy to commit money laundering. After a trial that detailed how he had used customers' money to buy property, make risk donations, and put toward other investments. A union representing thousands of workers at Samsung Electronics has called the first strike at the South Korean technology giant since it was first founded 5.5 decades ago. The National Samsung Electronics Union says it will hold a one-day protest while asking all of its members to use their paid leave on the 7th of June and has not ruled out a full-scale strike in the future. The union says it has about 28,000 members, accounting for more than a fifth of the company's total workforce. Samsung Electronics says it will continue to negotiate with the union. "We can't stand persecution against labour unions anymore. We are declaring a strike in the face of the company's neglect of labourers," a union representative said during a live-streamed news conference. Samsung Electronics management has been in talks with the union since the start of this year over wages, but the two sides have so far failed to strike a deal. The union has demanded a 6.5% pay rise and a bonus paid to the company's earnings. Samsung Electronics is the world's largest maker of memory chips, smartphones, and televisions. Analysts have warned that a full-scale strike could affect the firm's computer chip manufacturing and impact the global supply chains of electronics. Samsung Electronics is the flagship unit of South Korean conglomerate Samsung Group. It is the biggest of the country's family-controlled businesses that dominate Asia's fourth largest economy. Samsung Group was known for not allowing unions to represent its workers until 2020, when the company came under intense public scrutiny after its chairman was prosecuted for market manipulation and bribery. Samsung Electronics shares were trading about 2% lower in Seoul after the announcement. The UK mining giant Anglo American has rejected its rivals BHP's plea to extend the looming deadline for a final offer on a proposed £39 billion merger. Earlier on Wednesday, Australian BHP attempted to ease concerns about its plans for Anglo American's business in South Africa ahead of elections in the country. It made commitments that included job security for employees, but it said it needed an extension on talks to allow further engagement on plans. However, Anglo's decision means the mega merger is in jeopardy unless BHP changes its offer before 5 p.m. on Wednesday. Pair has been wrangling over the deal since Anglo American rejected BHP's first takeover approach, a £31.1 billion offer at the end of April. Anglo then rejected BHP's second £34 billion offer at the start of May and its third offer of £38.6 billion last week, but some Anglo shareholders urged the company to keep negotiating. Anglo and the South African government have also cited concerns about BHP's proposal to spin off the South African businesses. After rejecting BHP the third time, Anglo announced its own plans to break up its business by selling or spinning off major parts of the firm, including its De Beers diamond operation and its platinum division, with a view to focusing on key areas such as copper, premium iron ore, and hot nutrients. BHP has made a series of proposals it said it would keep for at least 3 years to ease Anglo's concerns. These include maintaining current staff levels at Anglo's Johannesburg office, keeping BHP listed on the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, and sharing the cost of increased South African employee ownership if required to secure regulatory approvals. However, Anglo said that BHP's offer still includes the same highly complex and unattractive structure as the proposals previously rejected on the 26th of April 2024 and the 13th of May 2024. Speaking to the BBC's Today programme on Wednesday before Anglo's update, Ben Davis, head of mining analyst Liberium Capital, said there was not really much meat on the bones of BHP's proposals. He added that they amount to continuation of its commitment to South Africa rather than an improvement. He also expressed concerns about the prospect of another listed UK company being snapped up by an overseas business. To see Anglo American gone from the London Stock Exchange would certainly be a loss. WhatsApp boss Will Cathcart has hit back at claims from Elon Musk that the messaging app exports your user data every night. Posting on X, Mr. Cathcart said the allegation was simply not correct, pointing to the fact that WhatsApp messages are end-to-end encrypted, meaning they cannot be read by the company at all. Yann LeCun, artificial intelligence chief at parent company Meta, has also weighed in that using a more industrial language in his post attacking Mr. Musk's claims. On another Meta platform, Threads, Mr. LeCun also leveled further criticism at Mr. Musk, accusing him of making contradictory and unrealistic claims about artificial intelligence and spewing conspiracy theories on his own social media platform. Mr. Musk has a well-established reputation for getting himself into online rows, from submariners to sacked former employees. In this case, Mr. Cathcart is right to say only the sender and recipient of a WhatsApp message can read its contents. In fact, the firm's commitment to encrypting messages is so significant that it previously said it would rather be blocked in the UK than weaken the encryption it uses. Mr. Musk's vague language, simply saying that user data was being uploaded, could however be interpreted to refer to metadata, the extra bits of information that's sent alongside the actual message. WhatsApp messages are end-to-end encrypted, but user data is not only about messages, said security researcher Tommy Misk in a post on X. That also includes the metadata such as user location, which contacts the user is communicating with, the patterns of when the user is online. It is known that WhatsApp doesn't share some metadata with other platforms Meta owns, but this does not include messages. One area of particular concern has been WhatsApp's sharing data with other Meta companies, said Dr. Tristan Henderson, lecturer in computer science at the University of St. Andrews. This does include sufficient metadata for these Meta companies to make suggestions and show personalized adverts, which in itself shows what metadata can reveal. The WhatsApp privacy policy specifically states that the firm will use some user data for showing relevant offers and ads across the Meta company products. Google's new artificial intelligence AI search feature is facing criticism for providing erratic, inaccurate answers. Its experimental AI overviews tool has told some users searching for how to make cheese stick to pizza better that they could use non-toxic glue. The search engine's AI-generated responses has also said geologists recommend humans eat 1 rock per day. A Google spokesperson has said that they were isolated examples. Some of the answers appear to be based on Reddit comments or articles written by satirical site The Onion. They have been widely mocked on social media, but Google insisted the feature was generally working well. The examples we've seen are generally very uncommon queries and aren't representative of most people's experiences. The vast majority of AI overviews provide high-quality information, which links to dig deeper on the web. It said it had taken action when policy violations were identified and was using them to refine systems. It is not the first time the company has run into problems with its AI-powered products. In February, it was forced to pause its chatbot Gemini, which was criticized for its word responses. Gemini's forerunner Bard also got off to a disastrous start. Google began trialing AI overviews in search results for a small number of logged-in UK users in April, but launched the feature to all US users at its annual developer showcase in mid-May. It works by using AI to provide a summary of search results, so users do not have to scroll through a long list of websites to find the information they're seeking. It is billed as a product that can take the legwork out of searching, though users are warned it is experimental. However, it is likely to be widely used and trusted because Google Search remains the go-to search engine for many. According to web traffic tracker StatCounter, Google's search engine accounts for more than 90% of the global market. It is still fundamental to the way in which Google makes its money and a service the firm needs to both protect and future-proof. Many industry experts agree that more focused AI-driven search is the way forward, despite the power-hungry text environmental price tag. Why wade through pages of search engine results and adverts to find information if a chatbot can give you a single definitive answer? But this only works if you can trust it. So-called hallucinations by generative AI tools are not just a problem for Google. As the world's largest search engine, it gets more scrutiny. In one baffling example, a reporter Googling whether they should use gasoline to cook spaghetti faster was told no, but you can use gasoline to make a spicy spaghetti dish and given a recipe. We don't know how many searches it got right because they're less funny to share on social media, but AI search clearly needs to be able to handle anything thrown at it, including at the more left field. Rival firms are facing a similar backlash over their attempts to cram more AI tools into their consumer-facing products. The UK's data watchdog is looking into Microsoft after it announced a feature coming to its new range of AI-focused PCs that would take continuous screenshots of their online activity. And ChatGPT maker OpenAI was called out by Hollywood actress Scarlett Johansson, who using a voice likened to her own, saying she turned down its request to voice the popular chatbot. Tesla boss Elon Musk says he opposes US tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles, EVs, just days after President Joe Biden quadrupled levies on EVs imported from China. Neither Tesla nor I asked for these tariffs, the multi-billionaire told a technology conference in Paris via video link. Mr. Musk's comments are at odds with the warning he made in January that Chinese car makers would demolish competitors from countries if there were no trade barriers. Last week, the White House said new measures, including a 100% tariff on EVs from China, were a response to unfair policies and intended to protect US jobs. In fact, I was surprised when they were announced. Things that inhibit freedom of exchange or distort the market are not good, Mr. Musk said on Thursday. Tesla competes quite well in the market in China with no tariffs and no differential support. I'm in favour of no tariffs. Mr. Biden has maintained a number of tariffs on China that were introduced by his predecessor, Donald Trump, while increasing trade pressure on Beijing. Last week, Mr. Biden vowed to not let China unfairly control the market for electric vehicles and other key goods, including batteries, computer chips, and basic medical supplies. China said it was opposed to the tariff hikes and would take retaliatory measures. This week, China launched an anti-dumping probe into imports of widely used plastic from the US, EU, Taiwan, and Japan. The announcement from the Ministry of Commerce that it will investigate imports of polymorphin copper, which is used in electronics and cars, was seen as a signal that China will hit back in its trade disputes with the US and Europe. Also this week, China signaled it could hit cars with large engines imported from the EU and ES. EU and US were tariffs as much as 25%. China Chamber of Commerce to the EU said it had been told about a potential move by what it called insiders. The European Commission EC, which oversees the EU's trade policies, has given itself a 4th of July deadline to decide whether to impose measures against imports of Chinese-made EVs. Every 2 weeks, Zoe Godrich scrapes the black mold off the walls of her children's bedrooms. She says her house now resembles a squat. It's absolutely heartbreaking because I can't provide for my children's basic needs of a safe, warm home. The mold took over after she had her Swansea home fitted with cavity wall insulation 3 years ago. She says that within weeks, water was constantly running down the walls like a little waterfall. The BBC can reveal that cavity wall insulation fitted under government-backed green energy schemes could have failed in hundreds of thousands of homes because it was not installed properly. Single mum Zoe and her 3 children are now sleeping in one room on mattresses on the floor. The other 2 bedrooms are uninhabitable, she says. She has thrown all of her beds and wardrobes away because they were consumed by damp and mold. She shows a photograph of her 6-year-old daughter's baby doll covered in black mold, which she had been. One of her daughters takes several medications for asthma. Her son has eczema so severe his cracked skin bleeds. She says that they were not on these medications before the installation was installed. The NHS says that damp and mold can lead to respiratory illnesses and skin conditions. David Walter is a building surveyor who has been inspecting insulated homes all over the UK for more than 25 years. He visited Zoe's home in April and said the installation had been botched and the extraction hadn't been done properly either. He says there is nothing unusual about what has happened to Zoe's home. The industry is motivated by money. They get government grants for doing this work. So there's an incentive for contractors just to get people signed up, get the job done and get the grant money. He blames the lack of oversight and regulation for the problems. Since 2008, more than 3 million homes have had cavity wall insulation fitted under green energy schemes set up by the government. Energy Supplies was responsible for inspecting 5% of them to check for installation quality. Figures compiled by energy watchdog Ofgem suggest that insulation in hundreds of thousands of these homes could have failed because it was not installed properly. In total, 15 million homes had their cavities filled. A year after the problems began, Zoe went on a merry-go-round of companies and organisations to try to get help. She began in early 2022 with Installers UK, which carried out the installation work. The company insisted the installation was to blame and then it went bust. The firm has said that the problems were caused by a hole in the roof, although it cannot provide a copy of the pre-installation report to confirm this. If there had been issues with the property, according to the standards body, the British Assessment Bureau, they should have been fixed before the work was carried out. Next, she contacted City Energy Network Limited to secure the funding for Zoe's home. Its name is on the guarantee, although City Energy says this was an error and that it had nothing to do with guarantee, which should have been issued by the company that did the work. Zoe says she was advised to get the installation removed. She took out a £7,000 loan to pay for it. What she didn't know was that the extraction would invalidate the guarantee for the work. Without the installation, the house is now very cold. She can't afford to turn up the temperature, which is leading to yet more damp and mold. City Energy has said that its only involvement was to fund a grant through the government scheme. It says it has no connection with Installers UK, nor was it involved in the installation or removal process. The government recognises that standards needed to be improved several years ago. It tasked the independent organisation Trustmarque to set up an assurance quality scheme in 2019. But the problems that Zoe has faced raise questions over how well the scheme is working. Both Installers in UK, which carried out the work in 2021, and City Energy, which secured the grant money, were Trustmarque registered. Zoe says she sees no resolution in sight. The life has just been sucked out of me. For the past few years, all I've done is fight company after company after company. City Energy says although it has no obligation to provide any assistance, it has recognised and sympathised with the position in which Ms Godric finds herself, and says it has sought to resolve matters directly with her in an effort to assist. In a statement, Trustmarque has said the problems at Ms Godric's property are complex. The work was carried out under an earlier standard and did not take the whole house approach that current standards do, preventing some of the issues seen here. However, the situation Ms Godric is left in is completely unacceptable and needs to be put right. We will work with the British Assessment Bureau and City Energy to achieve a suitable solution that makes Ms Godric's property a warm, comfortable and healthy home for her and her family. The Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero declined to comment, but referred them to a ministerial statement in February that said the government is committed to protecting all consumers, undertaking home retrofit work as well as improving the overall consumer journey. Criminals are selling guides on social media on how to carry out sextortion. The guides show people how to pose as young women online, trick a victim into sending sexually explicit material and then blackmail them. On Tuesday, Olamide Shanu appeared in court in London. He is believed to be part of a gang that made £2 million from blackmailing adults and children live. Last month, the National Crime Agency issued an alert to schools across the UK, warning against the dangers of sextortion. Experts say there's been a sharp rise in children falling victim to sextortion carried out by gangs based in West Africa, mainly Nigeria. In the UK, 2 British teenagers are known to have taken their own lives since October 2022 after becoming victims of sextortion. Paul Ruffle, an intelligent professional and expert on sextortion, describes the phenomenon as a massive threat to children. Internet scammers over these past 2 years found out that they can get very rich very quickly by scamming an untapped market, and that's teenagers. Mr. Raphael pointed out that adults have been targets for sextortion for years, and now teenage boys are among the most vulnerable. They are finding their victims by going on social media platforms and searching for high schools and youth sports teams, and then following or friending. They have found that guides on how to carry out crime are openly for sale in videos posted online. It is described in detail how to set up untraceable phone numbers, create fake social media profiles, and use secure payment methods. Some boast about the number of people they have blackmailed. One wrote that a victim paid him regularly every Friday. Lucy's 14-year-old son fell victim to a sextortion gang this year. Although he had not sent any images himself, the blackmailers mocked up a compromising picture and in a text threatened to share it. It was a message basically saying, "Don't shut us down. If you don't send us money in 24 hours, we'll send a picture to all your contacts." He was shell-shocked and he was literally physically shaking. The teenager had already paid the blackmailers £100, but with his parents' help, he shut down the account and the phone. He never heard from the blackmailers again. If he hadn't been at home that morning and they hadn't been in the kitchen, and if he hadn't talked to her, I don't know how it would have played out for him. The US authorities have applied to extradite Mr. Shanu, who appeared at Westminster Magistrates Court. The 33-year-old is wanted in the state of Idaho on charges of extortion, money laundering and cyberstalking. The charges relate to 4 victims, one of whom was a child. Investigators believe there may be hundreds of victims over a 3-year period. Mr. Raphael says the big tech companies are not doing enough to stop sextortion. This crime has really exploded on Instagram and Snapchat over the past 2 years. These platforms need to aggressively go after these criminals. Snapchat said, "We've been ramping up our efforts to combat it, including a reporting option specifically for threats to leak sexual content and in education for teens." In a statement, Meta, which owns Instagram, said it offered a dedicated reporting option so people can report anyone threatening to share private images. We default teens under 18 in the UK into private Instagram accounts at sign-up, which hides their followers and following lists, and into stricter default messaging settings. TikTok said that the platform was designed to be inhospitable for those intent on causing harm to teens, and we do not tolerate any content or behavior promoting sextortion. Some Jewish parents have been told by schools to delete social media from their children's phones in the wake of the Israel-Gaza war. One of the main concerns is over possible hostage videos being shared, which they say cause distress. The warnings are circulating not just in Israel itself, but also in the US and UK, with some singling out TikTok and Instagram in particular. Footage of civilians being killed have been shared online. A number of schools in Tel Aviv have been communicating the message to parents since the weekend. Elsewhere, a school in New Jersey in the US sent an email to parents suggesting they tell their kids to delete their social media platforms. Local psychologists have reached out to us and informed us that the Israeli government is urging parents to tell their children to delete Instagram and TikTok immediately, read an email sent to the school. Another school in New York said it was encouraging parents to monitor their social media usage and to discuss how to avoid opening these videos and what to do should they encounter such media. Social media has been flooded with graphic and disturbing images and videos since the attacks began. A Tel Aviv Schools Parents Association said that it has been told to expect a video of hostages begging for their lives. We cannot allow our kids to watch this stuff. It is also difficult, furthermore impossible, to clear all this content on social media, it said in a note to parents. David Lange, who runs the Israeli advocacy group Israeli Cool, told the BBC his daughter's school had communicated the message on a parents' WhatsApp group, encouraging parents to delete TikTok from their children's phones. Other Jewish organisations have advised parents to monitor their children's online activity to mitigate exposure to the violence. This approach has been echoed by some schools in the UK. One of the leading Jewish schools in the country has told the BBC the use of social media is a difficult, delicate matter because pupils are using the platforms all the time. Instead of an outright ban, they have encouraged parents to talk to their children about the content they are seeing. I think this always applies, particularly at the moment where what they are seeing might be very distressing, they said over email. The UK's Technology Secretary earlier met with the bosses of social media companies, Google, Meta, X, TikTok and Snapchat, where they were asked about the platforms to clearly set out what action they were taking to remove illegal material that breaches their terms and conditions. Michelle Donnellan said she was asked the tech giants to detail their plans in Write It. Actress Sophie Turner and her singer ex-husband Joe Jonas have agreed to share custody of their two children after resolving a legal dispute. The pair announced their amicable divorce last month, but Turner then sued Jonas, claiming he hadn't let the girls. The girls return to England from the US. In a joint statement on Tuesday, they said, after productive and successful mediation, we have agreed that the children will spend time equally in loving homes in both the US and the UK. They added, we look forward to being great co-parents. Their statement followed a new legal filing setting out a temporary joint custody arrangement for their daughters, aged 3 and 1, for the coming months. Turner had previously filed a legal petition citing the wrongful detention of their children in New York. She called for them to be returned to their permanent home in England and alleged that Jonas had refused to return their passports. In response, Jonas' representatives said his impression was that the pair would work together towards an amicable co-parenting setup, pointing out that the children were born in the US and had spent most of their lives there. Turner, aged 27, is best known for her role as Sansa Stark in Game of Thrones and has also appeared in drama series The Staircase and the X-Men film franchise. Jonas, aged 34, made his name in a pop band and a Disney Channel series with his two brothers. Labour plan to use Vote Rishi Get Liz to attack Conservatives in the run-up to the next general election. Senior figures believe former Prime Minister Liz Truss is toxic with voters. Labour are currently leading opinion polls by a substantial margin. The party intend to argue that if the Tories won a majority, it would likely be small enough for prominent figures on the right of the party, including Liz Truss, to have a significant influence. Last month, Labour posted a picture on X of Prime Minister Rishi Sunak in the pocket of his successor alongside the caption, "We know who's really in charge." For years, the Conservatives used a similar attack line against Labour. When Ed Miliband, now the Shadow Energy Secretary, was leader of the Labour Party, the Conservatives repeatedly argued that a vote for Mr Miliband would be a vote for the SNP. Labour insiders are more confident that they can rebut this attack line, following the swing back to Labour from the SNP in the recent Rotherglen and Hamilton West by-election. But now sources suggest they want to learn something from the Tories' former strategy. Labour intend to make a similar case in the run-up to next year's general election, blitzing voters with the message that if they vote for Mr Sunak, that this will pave the way for Miss Truss and allies of her in the party to have a substantial influence on policy. They argue that the matter of where the opinion polls sit at the moment would mean it would be much harder for the Conservatives to win the sizable majority they have enjoyed since 2019, and argue this leaves more room for factions of the party to exert control and influence. Former Prime Minister Theresa May, for example, struggled to pass much Brexit legislation due to pressure, particularly from the right-wing European Research Group of MPs in her party. The opinion polls started to really shift in Labour's favour after Mistrust's mini-budget last year, which spooked the financial markets and led to higher interest rates. Jason Atherton has left Marina Social in Dubai to open a new restaurant in the Emirate. The chef opened the restaurant at the Intercontinental Dubai Marina in 2015, but has now parted ways with the hotel brand to pursue his own project. Atherton has long had an association with Dubai. His first worked in the city in 2001 when he moved to open a Via at Hilton Dubai Creek, working with Gordon Ramsay and Angela Hartnett. It was at the hotel where he met his now wife and business partner, Aivtha Atherton, who was working as a receptionist. He left Dubai in 2005, returning a decade later to open Marina Social. Atherton said it was now time for a different direction. He added, "After 7 successful years at Marina Social, I've taken the tough decision to end my partnership with Intercontinental Hotel Group. It has been a fantastic project to be part of, and I would like to take this opportunity to thank the whole Marina Social team, IHG, Select Properties, Raheel and Antti for believing in our vision and supporting a journey which is close to my heart. It is now time for a different direction and to bring a new style of dining to Dubai." A separate statement from the social company announced that Jason is excited to develop an exciting new space within Dubai's restaurant scene. Last month, Atherton announced his departure from the Biltmore Hotel in London, where he ran the Betterment restaurant in partnership with Hilton. He said at the time that more London openings were planned for later in the year. A Palestinian refugee is taking legal action against the Home Office over what he says is in effect a refusal to grant visas to his family in Gaza. The Home Office rejected the man's request to allow his wife and 4 young children to apply for visas without giving fingerprints. 2 of his children have caught hepatitis A, which the World Health Organization says is spreading in Gaza. All applications are carefully considered on their individual merits and must meet the requirements of the immigration rules and published guidance, and officials say. A court anonymity order means the man and his family cannot be identified for their own protection, but in a witness statement to the court, he said he wanted to die when he had heard about the Home Office's decision. "I am so afraid that my family will be killed. They'll be killed while I am away from them, and I will blame myself for not being able to bring them here," the man said. People with refugee status can apply for family reunion visas for their family members to join them in the UK without going through the asylum system themselves. Asylum aid solicitor Anastasia Solopova, who's representing the family, has said in most circumstances when someone applies for a long-term British visa outside the UK, they need to give their biometrics, fingerprints and a photograph at a visa application centre or VAC for security reasons. Because there are no working VACs in Gaza, the family had applied to either be exempt from having to give their fingerprints or be allowed to travel to Egypt to give them at a centre there. In a refusal letter that's been seen, the Home Office had told the man that the government was not able to assist with exit or entry requirements for a third country, where a person needs to travel to that country to submit biometrics. Guidance, it adds, makes it clear that people must only apply for entry clearance if they can travel to the UK. There was now no way for the family to submit their biometrics, and they had brought a judicial review asking a judge to examine the Home Office's decision. We are challenging the decision in court, but the truth is that with every day of delay, our clients' families' lives are put in more danger. The Home Office should never have made this unlawful decision, which could mean that our client's wife and children could possibly die in Gaza without ever seeing our client again. Even before the current conflict, it was not easy for Palestinians to leave Gaza by the Rafah crossing into Egypt. They had to register with the local Palestinian authorities 2 to 4 weeks in advance, and may then have been rejected by either Palestinian or Egyptian authorities with little warning or explanation. And since the current war began, Egypt has said it is reluctant to allow an influx of refugees to Gaza. In November, the Home Office said it was working with Foreign Office to help British people and their non-British family members evacuate Gaza through the crossing, and at the time a team of Home Office staff was helping visa applicants in Egypt. Now people able to leave Gaza through the crossing receive medical, consular and administrative support from British Embassy staff based in Cairo. Hundreds of people wrongly convicted in the post office scandal are set to have their names cleared under new legislation planned by the government. The law is expected to come into effect by the end of July and will apply to convictions in England and Wales. It will apply to convictions meeting specific criteria and is expected to clear the majority of victims. Governments said the possible exoneration of some genuinely guilty crimes was the price worth paying. Between 1999 and 2015, more than 900 sub-postmasters were wrongly prosecuted due to faulty software. Incorrect information provided by a computer system called Horizon, developed by Japanese firm Fujitsu, meant that sub-postmasters and postmistresses were prosecuted for stealing money. Many of those convicted went to prison for false accounting and theft. Many were financially ruined. Some sub-postmasters caught up in the scandal have died or taken their own lives in the intervening years. So far, 100 102 convictions have been overturned. Keith Bell has been a sub-postmaster in Stockton-on-Tees since 1985, but like hundreds of others, he started noticing discrepancies in his accounts. Potter Horizon was installed in his branch. He called post office helplines but was given little support. He spent more than £12,000 of his own money to make up the shortfalls and eventually delayed some transactions to try to balance the books. He was convicted of false accounting in 2002 and had to do 200 hours of community service. He didn't challenge his conviction at the time as he didn't have the means to take on a post office, and he believed he had been fault. But now the 75-year-old wants his name cleared and expects his conviction to be quashed. I'm relieved they're going to quash all the convictions, which is not overdue, he said in response to the announcement on Thursday. It's some relief to be able to talk to friends. It's a relief to be able to look people in the eye now. The issue was thrust back into the spotlight by an ITV drama, Mr. Bates Blessed the Post Office, earlier in the year. Christensen had said that the process for overturning convictions and getting compensation was far too slow. There are three main schemes aimed at groups of victims who had different experiences of the scandals, but the schemes have been accused of being long-winded and complicated. Announcing the plans, Post Office Minister Kevin Hollenrake said that the legislation was likely to exonerate and people who were in fact guilty of the crime. But he said the government accepts that this is a price worth paying in order to ensure that many innocent people are exonerated. Some 700 people were prosecuted by the Post Office. Another 283 cases were brought by other agencies, including the Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, and the Department for Work and Pensions, DWP. Prosecutions by the DWP will not be quashed under the new law. Mr. Hollenrake said the new legislation would overturn all convictions that met certain criteria, and it will only cover convictions for the Post Office and CPS. Relevant offences such as theft and false accounting, sub-postmasters and their employees or family members, cases where the offence took place during the time that the Horizon system and its pilots was in operation, cases where the convicted person was working in a post office that was using the Horizon system software, including relevant pilot schemes, cases in England and Wales. However, the government said it would work with the Scottish Government and Northern Ireland Executive to ensure their schemes to quash convictions are compatible with the UK compensation scheme. Labour MP Kevin Jones said he welcomed news of the legislation, but added it was vital that the government set aside enough time for the new law to be passed as quickly as possible. There are some initial key questions that need answering, including whether the Post Office capture system counts as a pilot of the Horizon system for the recollection for the purposes of this bill. Mr. Hollenrake added he recognised the constitutional sensitivity of the planned legislation, but added it did not set a precedent for the future relationship between the government, Parliament and the judiciary. The scale and certain the chances of this prosecutorial misconduct demands an exceptional response. We are keen to ensure that the legislation achieves its goal of bringing prompt justice to all of those who were wrongfully convicted as a result of scandal, followed by rapid financial redress. A spokesperson for DWP confirmed the new law would not apply to prosecutions brought by its department. Between 2001 and 2006, a small number of post office staff were convicted for welfare-related fraud offences, mostly involving cashing in on stolen benefit order books. These criminal cases were not Horizon-related and followed lengthy, comprehensive investigations, relying on multiple sources of evidence, including film surveillance, examination of stolen cashed orders, and witness statements. While reference may have been made to Horizon in court, DWP did not rely on Horizon evidence to prove these cases, and this has been accepted by the Court of Appeal. The International Monetary Fund has rejected government suggestions that its latest assessment of the UK economy is too gloomy. The influential global group forecasts the UK will have the highest inflation and slowest growth the next year of any G7 economy, falling behind the US, France, Germany, Canada, Italy, and Japan. The Treasury said recent revisions to UK growth have not been factored in to the IMF's report, but the group denied being pessimistic. IMF chief economist Pierre-Olivier Gorinches has said to the BBC, "We're above the Bank of England estimate for growth for next year, so I don't think we are particularly pessimistic. I think we're trying to be honest interpreters of the data here. Forecasts are never perfect given the many factors that affect economic growth, from geopolitics to the weather, but such reports can point in the right direction, especially when they align with other predictions." The IMF, an international organisation with 190 member countries, has said the forecast it makes for growth the following year, and most advanced economies have more often than not been within about 1.5 percentage points of what actually happens. In July last year, it forecast that the UK economy would grow by 3.2% in 2022. It revised that upwards to 4.1% at the start of this year, but official UK figures released last month estimate country's economy expanded by 4.3% in 2022, considerably more than the IMF's initial estimate. According to the group's latest forecast, which it produces every 6 months, it expects the UK to grow more quickly than Germany in 2023, keeping the UK out of bottom place for growth among the G7, but it downgraded the UK's prospects for next year, estimating that the economy will grow by 0.6%, making it the slowest growing developed country in 2024, widely predicted to be a general election year. The IMF says the UK's immediate prospects are being weighed down by the need to keep interest rates high to control inflation, which has been falling but remains stubbornly above target. It warned Bank of England rates would peak 6% and stay around 5% until 2028. Rates are currently 5.25%. The decline in UK growth reflects tighter monetary policies to curb still high inflation and lingering impacts of the terms of trade shock from high energy prices, the report said. The IMF's forecast has come at a bad time for the UK government, which is keen to promote the idea that the economy is at a turning point, with inflation falling decisively and interest rates likely to have peaked. Government sources suggested that the IMF have not taken into account the fact that expectations for market interest rates had fallen in recent weeks and that the Office for National Statistics, ONS, had upgraded its assessment of the UK's post-pandemic recovery. However, Mr. Gorinchas rejected that, telling the BBC that the IMF had absolutely factored in interest rates peaking late last month and that there is no discrepancy. He added that a preliminary read of the ONS's revised data had changed the picture for 2021, but probably not much for the current forecast. If anything, he said, past upgrades for 2021 would mean there is less room to grow and catch up, so it might not lead to a big change upwards in terms of growth performance. Responding to the IMF's report earlier, Chancellor Jeremy Hunt said the IMF has upgraded growth for this year and downgraded it for next. For longer term, they say our growth will be higher than France, Germany or Italy. To get there, we need to deal with inflation and do more to unlock growth. On Tuesday, the Bank of England's Financial Policy Committee, FPC, which monitors the stability of the UK financial system, also warned on the UK's high interest rates. It said financial markets expected rates would have to stay high for a long time, putting pressure on household finances. The full impact of higher interest rates has not yet been passed through to all borrowers, it added. The IMF is already warning of signs of slowdown in the world economy after what happened to be a resilient start to the year. For example, tourism had recovered following the pandemic, boosting economies with large travel and tourism sectors such as Italy, Mexico and Spain. But a slowdown in interest rate-sensitive manufacturing sectors was dragging on growth, and there were signs that China's momentum was fading following its reopening surge at the start of 2023. The IMF predicts global growth will fall from 3.5% in 2022 to 3% in 2023 and 2.9% in 2024. The global economy continues to recover from the pandemic, and Russia's invasion of Ukraine showing remarkable resilience, Mr. Gorinchas said. Yet growth remains slow and uneven. The global economy is limping along, not sprinting. The typical annual energy bill will fall to £1,690 from April, to the lowest for 2 years under the new price cap set by the regulator. It means a drop of £238 a year for a household, or around £20 a month, using a typical amount of energy. Lower wholesale prices paid by suppliers have led to the cut in the price cap for April to June, which will bring us some relief to bill payers. But campaigners said bills are still high and many will still struggle to pay. Energy prices are now at the lowest level since Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. However, even after April's drop, bills will remain well above pre-pandemic levels. The regulator's price cap affects 29 million households in England, Wales and Scotland. Rules are different in Northern Ireland, where prices are also falling. Ofgem sets the maximum amount that suppliers can charge for each unit of gas and electricity, but not the total bill. So if you use more, you will pay more. Specifically in England, Wales and Scotland, gas prices will be capped at 6 pence per kilowatt hour, and electricity at 24 pence per kilowatt hour. That compares to current gas price of 7.42 pence per kilowatt hour and at 28.62 pence per kilowatt hour for electricity. Households on prepayment meters will pay the same as those on direct debit. Those who pay their bills every 3 months by cash or cheque will pay more. Standing charges, a fixed daily charge covering the cost of connecting to supply, have risen to 60 pence a day for electricity and 31 pence a day for gas, although they vary by region. The regulator will add £28 to everyone's bill over a year to cover the cost of dealing with £3.1 billion of debt that customers owe to suppliers. That will pay for some debt to be written off for energy companies to offer repayment plans. Dame Claire Moriarty, Chief Executive of Citizens Advice, said it's good news that the cost of energy is falling, but the impact of sky-high prices will be felt for years to come. Families like Mum Sam from Greater Manchester and her sons Reuben 8 and Jensen 10 have been working hard to keep bills down by cutting their energy usage. I put the heating on in the morning just to give a little blast when the boys get up, and then maybe at the evening just for an hour, but we just try and cut back as much as possible. And I wear as many clothes, coats and things as I can, especially when I'm working from home. The boys are very aware of it because we talk openly about it, she said. That's why, as much as they do think I'm always liking them, it's just about trying to save money and save on energy. She said that the lower prices would take the pressure off and give a little bit of room in the budget, but they would continue to energy as much as they can. The vast majority of people pay by direct debit, with payments smoothed out over the year. However, those who pay via prepayment meter so often pay for energy as they use it would have benefited more had the cut come over the winter. Jonathan Brearley, chief executive of Ofgem, said that by April, energy bills for the average household will have fallen by £690 since the peak prices. But there are still big issues that we must tackle head-on to ensure we build a system that's more resilient for the long term and fairer to customers. Mr. Brearley said the regulator was looking at standing charges, a fixed daily amount which covers the cost of connecting to a supply. There has been criticism about increases to these charges, and some have argued they should be abolished. But Mr. Brearley said the issues were complex. The analysis we've done says there's a large group who are made somewhat better off by abolishing it, while there's a big but slightly smaller group who are made significantly worse off. In the winter of 2022 to 2023, overall energy prices were high, and rises would have been bigger had it not been for the government's energy price guarantee, limiting the typical bill to £2,500. Each household also received £400 support over 6 months, but the government did not repeat the discount this winter. Cost of living payments seem set to end following a final instalment this month, and no plans have been announced for a continuation of the Household Support Fund, which councils use to offer direct support. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt could choose to address future support when he presents his budget on the 6th of March. A spokesperson for the Department for Energy Security said that we halved inflation and energy prices are now significantly lower than their peak, but we recognise the challenges families are still facing. Labour's Shadow Energy Secretary Ed Miliband said that whilst it's welcome that the price cut is coming down, truth is that energy bills are still far too high for hard-working families. Banking giant Lloyds has set aside £450 million to cover the potential cost of an investigation into car finance deals by the UK's financial regulator. A probe into whether people have been paying too much for cars was launched by the Financial Conduct Authority, FCA, last month. Brokers who arrange car financing earned commission on the interest rates that they set customers. Lloyds revealed the provision as it announced a big rise in annual profits. Banks said that pre-tax profits jumped to £7.5 billion last year, which was higher than expected and up 57% from the year before. The FCA announced last month that it would investigate whether people who believe they were charged too much for car loans were owed compensation. Meanwhile, the Financial Ombudsman says it has received 17,000 complaints to date about motor finance commission. Lloyds is seen as the most exposed of the major banks to any claims, as it owns one of the UK's largest motor finance providers, Black Horse. Under what were called discretionary commission arrangements, some lenders had allowed car dealers to adjust interest rates on loans, which would improve the commission they receive. In short, the higher the interest rates, the higher the commission. As a result, these deals created an incentive for brokers to increase how much people were charged for their car loan. In 2021, the FCA banned these arrangements, saying it would collectively save drivers £165 million a year. Last month, the regulator said that about 10,000 people had made complaints to an ombudsman, with many more waiting in the wings. If we find widespread misconduct, we will act to make sure people are compensated in an orderly, consistent and efficient way, the FCA said at the time. The amount that Lloyds eventually pays compensation could be higher or lower than the initial amount is set aside. The potential cost of compensation has raised comparisons to the amount paid out during the Payment Protection Insurance (PPI) mis-selling scandal, which cost banks tens of billions of pounds. But Lloyds Chief Financial Officer William Chalmers told reporters that the car finance probe was not like remediations. Lloyds Chief Executive Charlie Nunn said that the extent of any misconduct or loss on behalf of customers, if any, it remains very unclear, so we welcome the FCA's announcement a few weeks ago to look into this, provide clarity for customers and the industry. Matt Britzman, equity analyst at Carlebrews Lansdowne, said the £450 million set aside by the bank was less than some had feared. There will be question marks around how Lloyds has come to the figure. Lloyds has been honest in saying the outcome of the review is largely unknown. He added, "What we do know is that Lloyds is one of the most exposed banks should the FCA deem there was misconduct and customer loss." Lloyds also said in its annual report that it was the subject of another investigation by the financial watchdog, looking at the group's compliance with money laundering rules and regulations. It said it was fully complying with the investigation, although it could not say whether or not it would have any impact on its finances yet. Separately, Mr. Nunn also said that Lloyds, which also owns the Halifax, Bank of Scotland and Scottish Widow brands, was predicting the UK's economy would see lowish but positive growth each year. When he said the economy was resilient, he added that some customers were struggling to make ends meet, whether it's those who are struggling with some cost of inflation or alternatively the high mortgage costs. Like other UK banks, Lloyds' profits have been helped by the increase in interest rates over the past years, which have helped lenders to charge more on loans while not significantly increasing payouts to savers. Lloyds says its underlying net interest income, which is the difference between the money it charges for loans and pays for savings, rose 5% to 13.8. What to do if you think you are owed compensation for your car finance? Claims for compensation can be made if you bought a vehicle on finance before the 28th of January 2021 and the finance provider and car dealer had a discretionary commission arrangement. The Financial Ombudsman Service advises that you should first talk to your car dealer or finance provider so they have a chance chance to put things right. If you're unhappy with the response, then you can complain to the Ombudsman. Your complaint can be about finance providers, credit brokers such as the car dealership, or other credit intermediaries. If the Ombudsman decides to handle your case, it says its aim is to put you back in the position you would have been if the problem hadn't happened. The Office for National Statistics, ONS, revealed in its latest figures that the UK fell into a recession during the second half of 2023. A recession means that the UK economy contracted in 2 consecutive quarters, with news coming after a difficult period for manufacturers and consumers as they continue to manage high levels of food and drink inflation, the cost of living crisis, and expensive energy bills. It was also revealed by the ONS that food prices fell during January 2004 for the first time in more than 2 years. They remain high, with the food and non-alcoholic beverage inflation rate now at 7%. The economy-wide inflation rate, meanwhile, sits at 4%. How the government will respond to the news of a recession remains to be seen, but with the general election on the horizon, changes could be afoot. Asked for his perspective on the current state of the UK economy and the food and drink sector, non-executive director at Rolex, Julian Wild, has said that current circumstances are made for a toxic mix. Contrary to the government's pledges, inflation is not falling as fast as predicted and is still at least double the Bank of England's 2% target. Add to this that the economy is not growing, interest rates are being held at current levels for the time being, the UK is burdened by high levels of national debt, and there is no scope for tax cuts without reducing cash-strapped public services even further. The net result is that big swathes of the population are feeling the cost of living crisis and are mightily fed up. How this all relates to food and drink manufacturers, well added, the food industry seems to have settled down after this huge hike in energy costs, but is still seeing wage inflation around 6% and increases in the national living wage. As always, getting price increases from customers is difficult and manufacturers are always squeezed. Head of Consumer Research at Shore Capital, Dr. Clive Black, described a similarly challenging picture, explaining that current environment was putting lots of pressure on the food and drink sector. Straitened consumers cut back on volumes and traded down whilst energy and labour costs went up. Businesses had to navigate how much to recover from the market with volume and mixed consequences of price rises. Black believes that pressures applied to consumers have benefited some areas of the food and beverage sector and penalised others. The outcome, a big switch in share from proprietary brands to private label, with the German discount chains and retailers with strong loyalty programs coming through. There was also a switch from the hospitality channel to retail. Private label manufacturers gained share, but cost recovery was tough. Branded players are now trying to recoup some of the lost share with promotions. Projecting forward, Black feels that 2024 will prove more stable, with inflation normalising and living standards on the rise. Recovering volumes, improved mix, and more settled trading, what could possibly go wrong? Meanwhile, Nick Ryan, co-founder and CCO at Acumen Commercial Insights, said that the news of recession puts the cost of living crisis into further perspective. This reinforces in consumers' minds that they need to be prudent in terms of expenditure. In food retailing, this plays into the hands of the discounters, who will continue to attract shoppers with their value messaging, while the mainstream retailers will continue to try and emulate this through their Aldi and Lidl price match schemes. Striking a more positive tone, Ryan believes that with food and drink inflation falling and interest rates expected to be cut halfway through the year, consumer optimism could be on the rise soon. He added, we can expect some upturn in household expenditure as we head into Q2 of 2024. However, geopolitical instability in the Middle East, compounded by the Red Sea issues, will continue to fan the inflationary winds and might cause inflation to be stickier than one would like. Lucy Letby's bid to appeal against all of her convictions for murdering and attempting to murder babies will be heard in court in April. The nurse's case will be considered by a panel of judges at a public hearing. Letby was convicted of the murder of 7 babies and the attempted murder of another 6 at the Countess of Chester Hospital between 2015 and 2016. She lodged her appeal application shortly after her trial ended. The 34-year-old, originally from Hereford, was turned down at the first stage when a single judge reviewed her case papers. Letby is now entitled to a full court hearing set for 25th of April before 3 judges, at which her barrister will argue for the right to an appeal. If she is granted permission, an appeal hearing will be set by the court for a separate date. If she loses, it'll be at the end of the appeal process for her. The offences took place at Countess of Chester Hospital neonatal unit between June 2015 and June 2016. On sentencing in August last year, Letby was given multiple whole life terms, one for each offence, becoming only the 4th woman in the UK history to receive such sentence. Separately, Letby is facing a retrial in June on one account of attempted murder, which the jury in her trial was unable to reach a verdict. Jada Pinkett Smith has revealed in a new interview that she and her husband will Smith had been separated since 2016. Though the actors were living completely separate lives for 7 years, they were not ready to publicly confirm the news before she confessed to NBC. By the time they separated, she said that they were exhausted with trying. Their pairs still live separately, but do not plan on divorcing. Pinkett Smith, age 52, told NBC she had promised herself that she and Smith, age 55, would never get a divorce, and said she has not been able to break that promise. I think we were both kind of just still stuck in our fantasy of what we thought the other person should be, she said. The interview came ahead of the release of Pinkett Smith's memoir, Worthy, next week. The couple made headlines last year when Smith stormed the stage at the Oscars and slapped host Chris Rock, "Keep my wife's name out of your mouth." The incident came after Rock made a joke about Pinkett Smith being bald. The actress suffers from alopecia, a condition which causes hair loss. In a separate interview, Pinkett Smith told People she initially thought it was part of her planned joke. "It wasn't until when Will started to walk back to his chair that I even realised it wasn't a skit." She said, "I'm going to be by his side, but also allow him to have to figure this out for himself." There was speculation about the couple's marriage in 2020 when the pair went on Pinkett Smith's Facebook show, Red Table Talk, and discussed Pinkett Smith's entanglement with artist August Alsina. The actors met in 1994 when Pinkett Smith auditioned for Smith's show, The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, and later married in 1997. They have 2 children together, Jaden Smith and Willow Smith, along with Trey Smith, Smith's son, with his first wife, Sherry Zampino. Apple has blamed a bug in its operating system and updates to apps such as Instagram for its new iPhone 15 overheating. Since the latest model of the smartphone went on sale in September, some users have complained the devices are getting too hot to touch. Apple said there was a bug when updating iOS 17 on the phone, but it also claimed that changes to third-party apps are causing them to overload the system. iPhone users have come to expect their devices to become hotter during the initial setup, but it also claimed that changes to third-party apps are causing them to overload the system. iPhone users have come to expect their devices to become hotter during the initial setup or what they are being backed up due to the amount of processing power being used and a handset working over time. But these issues with the iPhone 15 have been worse. Users took to social media to complain the new phones was searing. Apple said that the device may feel warmer in the first few days after setting up or restoring the device because of increased background activity. The company said, "We have identified a few conditions which could cause iPhones to run warmer than expected. This includes a bug in iOS 17, which is the latest version of Apple's software, which is accessible for its most recent models." It said that another issue involves some recent updates to third-party apps that are causing them to overload the system, and it's working with app developers on fixes that are in the process of being rolled out. Among the apps blamed for the problem are Instagram, Uber, and the video game Asphalt 9, according to Apple. Instagram already fixed the issue with its app last week. The upcoming iOS 17 bug fix will not reduce performance in order to address the iPhone's temperature. Apple stressed that the warming phones is not related to the new titanium casing. It houses the iPhone 15 Pro and iPhone 15 Pro Max, instead of the stainless steel used on older smartphones. It also dismissed speculation that the overheating problem was anything to do with the new USB-C port that allowed it to comply with a mandate issued by European regulators. Apple said the issue is not a safety or injury risk and will not impact the phone's long-term performance. Vice Media plans to cut hundreds of jobs as it stops publishing on Vice.com, according to a memo from Chief Executive Bruce Dixon. In May, the firm filed for bankruptcy in the US and was bought by Fortress Investment Group. Mr. Dixon said Vice plans to partner with established media companies to distribute our digital content. Media firms, including Channel 4, Los Angeles Times, and Business Insider, have also cut jobs this year. Mr. Dixon said it is no longer cost-effective for us to distribute our digital content the way we have done so previously. Regrettably, this means that we will be reducing our workforce, eliminating 700 positions. The company continues to sell the business, according to Mr. Dixon, who said the announcement will be made in the coming weeks. Before filing for Chapter 11 bankruptcy protection, procedure which postpones a US company's obligations to its creditors, Vice announced previous layoffs by shutting down its flagship TV program. Launched in 1994 as a fringe magazine called Voice Montreal by Shane Smith, Gavin McInnes, and Shoresh Albi, Vice Media operates in more than 30 countries. The company was valued at $5.7 billion or £4.5 billion in 2017 and was once heralded as part of Vanguard companies set to disrupt the traditional media landscape with edgy, youth-focused content spanning print, events, music, online, TV, and feature films. Hope was that Vice would attract millions of younger people through social media platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. Its production included My Journey Inside the Islamic State, in which a Vice journalist filmed alongside the terror group in Syria. Vice also followed basketball star Dennis Rodman and the Harlem Globetrotters team on a sports diplomacy trip to North Korea. More recent content included documentaries about controversial influencer Andrew Tate and a film about Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky by actor Sean Penn. However, the company's revenues have been flat for some years and it has been struggling to turn a profit. Vice's plans to go public through a merger have also also failed. Households could be asked to pay an extra £17 a year on their energy bills to help prevent suppliers going bust, according to the industry watchdog. Ofgem said it was considering the measure to protect the market and consumers after figures showed energy debts reached £2.6 billion in the summer. The rise in debt was due to both the increase in wholesale energy prices and wider cost of living pressures. Any rise in bills would not take place until April next year, Ofgem said. The timing of an increase was designed to protect consumers from extra costs during the winter. It said, "We know that households across the country are struggling with wider costs of living challenges, including energy, so any decision to add a cost price cap is not one we take lightly," said Tim Jarvis, Director General for Markets at Ofgem. However, the scale of unrecoverable debt and the potential risk of suppliers leaving the market or going bust, which passes on even greater costs to households, means we must look at all the regulatory options available to us. Ofgem said that if a one-off rise to bills did not take place, there is a risk that consumers could face even higher costs and poorer standards of service if suppliers go out of business. The regulators said that when energy prices started to rise in 2021, about 30 suppliers went out of business, and this led to every energy customer being charged an extra £82 to cover the costs of making sure households were not cut off. Ofgem said it would consult with the energy regulator industry, consumer groups and the public over the options, including how any rise in bills might be spread out. "We must consider the fairest way to maintain a stable energy market, and we will do this in consultation with all our partners to ensure we are protecting the most vulnerable households," said Mr Jarvis. Under Ofgem's latest price cap, which affects 29 million households in England, Wales and Scotland, the annual energy bill for a typical household is £1,923. While that is £577 lower than last winter, average annual gas and electricity bills remain high by historical standards. In winter 2021, an energy bill for a typical household was £1,277. In addition, government support last winter of £400 for each household is not being repeated this year, and analysts have forecasted that bills will rise again in January. Citizens Advice said it was worrying that more households were falling behind with their energy bills during the warmer months. High energy prices mean millions of people remain at risk of falling behind in the coming months, said Dame Claire Moriarty, Chief Executive of Citizens Advice. An increase in the price cap to pay for higher debts will make people's bills even more unaffordable. Any change must be in the best interest of all consumers. For now, the government must provide additional bill support this winter for those at most risk. Chief Executive of charity National Energy Action, Adam Scorer, said the enormous amount of energy debt was crushing vulnerable households. Government cannot just look the other way and hope for the best. This is the highest level of energy debt we have seen. It is growing quickly and concentrated in the poorest households. A Department for Energy Security and Net Zero spokesperson said, "We would encourage anyone worried about their energy bill to speak to their supplier. We are supporting the most vulnerable this winter by helping an estimated 3 million families with £150 of energy bills through the Warm Hand discount. This comes on top of £900 cost of living support for those in need, as well as nearly £40 billion provided last winter, cover around half a typical household's energy. We continue to keep all options under review while ensuring competition can return to the market to offer best value for all." Here are some energy-saving ideas from environmental scientist Angela Terry, who set up One Home, a social enterprise that shares green money-saving tips. Get a water-efficient shower, head free of charge from your water company, and use showers rather than baths. Consider loft insulation, which she says costs around £680 for a typical semi-detached home and could save £285 a year on gas bills. Hang out washing instead of using a tumble dryer and walk instead of drive when possible. Use windy days to feel where draughts are in the house, wetting in the back of your hand helps to locate them, and use insulation or drought-proofing tape. Where available, press the smaller button to use less water to flush the toilet. More mortgage providers will increase their rates on new fixed deals on Friday following a series of changes since the start of the year. January saw lenders cutting their rates sharply, bringing some relief of 1.6 million people set to remortgage this year. A higher cost faced by providers to fund mortgage lending means many have raised rates again in recent days. HSBC, NatWest and Virgin Money are all increasing the cost of new deals. This will mean the end of widely available 5-year fixed deals with a rate of less than %. The average rate on all new fixed deals has been edging higher recently as lenders have altered their pricing. This may catch some borrowers by surprise when the rate story this year has generally been one of falling rates, said David Hollingworth from broker London and Country. He said lenders had been shifting rates regularly. They are responding to the views of investors who now expect the Bank of England's Monetary Policy Committee to make fewer and later changes to its base rate of 5.25% this year than previously anticipated. Cuts in this interest rate makes borrowing less expensive. The interest rate on a fixed mortgage does not change until the deal expires, usually after 2 or 5 years, and a new one is chosen to replace it. Doing nothing would leave people on a variable rate, which is very expensive. About 1.6 million existing borrowers have relatively cheap fixed rate deals expiring this year. Santander, Coventry Building Society, and TSB all raised rates on the new fixed deals earlier in the week. HSBC's best buyers deals were never going to last long once Santander pushed up its fixed rates, said Aaron Strutt, mortgage broker at Trinity Financial. While they've gone up, deals are still reasonably priced. Some lenders now offer 2-year fixed rates priced at around 4.4% and 5-year fixes priced at around 0.2%. Lenders have had a busy start to the year and the property market as it has really picked up. These rate hikes may well start to knock the property sector again if they continue. Andrew Montlake, managing director of Coronco Mortgage Brokers, said there is a massive sense of deja vu as several mainstream lenders have increased their rates with little notice in a throwback to the dark days of 2003. This all makes life extremely difficult for those trying to find a new mortgage, as once again, quick decisions are needed or carefully worked out. Budgets need to be revisited, which can sometimes mean the difference between obtaining their dream home or not. However, there are signs of lenders failing to settle on where rates should be set. Halifax, part of Lloyds Banking Group, is cutting the rates on some of its deals on Friday. I expect there will still be plenty of jockeying for position as the market remains extremely competitive, but in the short term, we may still see more movement in mortgage rates. Skeletal remains have been found at the home of missing woman Tina Satchwell in County Cork. Miss Satchwell was 45 when she was reported missing from a home in Grattan Street in Younghall in March 2017. Remains which have not been identified were discovered during a search of Miss Satchwell's home on Wednesday evening by Gardaí or the Irish police investigating her disappearance. A man has been arrested. Gardaí upgraded their missing persons investigation to a murder investigation on Tuesday. The house in Younghall was cordoned off while Gardaí searched the property. A man was arrested on suspicion of the murder of Miss Satchwell, but he was released without charge on Wednesday night. The investigation into Miss Satchwell's disappearance has remained active over the past 6.5 years. 3 months after she was reported missing, Gardaí conducted a technical and forensic examination of the story home, she said, with her husband and the couple's car. Later that year, the Garda Water Unit conducted a search of the shoreline in Youghal, while officers also searched an area of wasteland elsewhere in town. In March 2023, on the 6th anniversary of her disappearance, Gardaí renewed their appeal for the public's help. John Lewis boss Dame Sharon White is to step down after 5 years, making her the shortest-serving chair in the partnership's near 100-year history. Dame Sharon's 5-year term ends in February 2025. She has told the board she will not seek a second term. The partnership reported a loss of £234 million last year, forcing it to scrap the annual staff bonus. She said the chain was making progress in its transformation, but admitted there was a long road ahead. Her 5-year term as chair will be the shortest in John Lewis's history. Her predecessors each served between 13 and 26 years. Dame Sharon, who was the first woman to lead John Lewis, had faced controversy after she considered breaking the historic employee-owned structure of the partnership, which also owns the supermarket chain Waitrose, by selling a stake to outside investors to raise money to invest in the partnership. That plan was eventually shelved. Having led the partnership through the pandemic and the worst cost of living crisis, it is important that there is now a smooth and orderly succession process and handover. Dame Sharon was the wrong person to chair John Lewis, according to retail analyst Neil Saunders from Global Data Retail. She didn't cause all of the issues the company faces, but she's also done much damage. Her ill-advised and now backtracked on the view that outside equity might be brought in, but the morale of partners and showed a lack of understanding of what makes JLP special. Her lack of retail experience and her civil service background have, quite bluntly, not served the company well. The next chairman of JLP needs to have both qualities she lacked. The board is expected to announce her successor next year. Who is Dame Sharon White? Dame Sharon was born in the East End of London. Her parents are part of the Windrush generation who came to Britain from the Caribbean in the 1950s. She studied economics at the University of Cambridge and went on to postgraduate studies in economics at University College London. After joining the civil service in the late 1980s, she worked her way up and in 2013 became a second permanent secretary at the Treasury. Dame Sharon went on to be chief executive of the media regulator Ofcom in 2015 before joining John Lewis in 2020. In an interview with the BBC in June, she defended her economist and civil service background, saying that her predecessors at John Lewis had included someone from the civil service and one from an army background. She said her non-retail experience reflected John Lewis's unusual structure of its decision-making, which was more democratic. 2 weeks ago, the partnership announced losses had narrowed to £59 million for the first 6 months of the year. At the time, John Lewis said its plan to return to sustainable profit would take 2 years longer than planned as a result of rising business costs and larger than expected investment requirements. The group also said its modernisation plans would take precedence over its staff bonus. When John Lewis said in March that it would not pay a staff bonus after a very tough 2022, it was only the second time it had failed to do so since the scheme began in 1953. Department store has faced stiff competition in recent years on the high street, resulting in a series of store closures, whilst Waitrose has also underperformed. Recently, it was reported that Waitrose was considering selling off a number of stores and leasing them back to raise cash. Employers are extremely concerned up to 20,000 health workers in England have not yet received a one-off payment of nearly £1,655 agreed last May. NHS staff in England were awarded the lump sum alongside a 5% pay rise. Those in frontline NHS settings but employed by social enterprises were initially excluded until November when ministers agreed to fund it. The government says NHS organisations are responsible for making the payments. Employers were told to apply to the Department of Health and Social Care to receive funding to cover the award, but they say there is still no indication when this will happen. They have not yet been updated on the progress. These social enterprises are often not-for-profit community organisations founded to take on services outsourced by the NHS in England. Staff, including community nurses and physiotherapists, are transferred across from NHS trusts that remain on the same pay conditions, and some continue to wear NHS uniforms. Social Enterprise UK Director Dan Bilbrey said social enterprises were promised funding to cover all parts of the NHS pay deal last year, but our members still haven't seen that money. So vital staff working hard on the front line have now been waiting nearly a year for the government to happily fund the bonus that was agreed last spring. We remain extremely concerned that the government is not fulfilling its side of the deal to ensure that all staffing and deliver NHS care are paid what they deserve. Social Enterprise UK had threatened to take the government to court under judicial review proceedings, but paused its action when ministers said that they would come up with the money. But the option to continue with the action expires this week, meaning that Social Enterprise UK would have to go back to the start of the prolonged judicial review process. CSH Surrey provides community nursing and therapy services to adults and children. Management were hoping to get the lump sum into March pay packets, but Chief Executive Steve Flanagan said to date we have not had any feedback or communication regarding the outcome of our application. We were hopeful that after the positive response, this would be resolved quickly, allowing our overlooked colleagues to be treated equally. But so far, this has not been the case. Speech and language therapist Pippa Wiseman said that we continued seeing patients throughout lockdown in full personal protective equipment, visiting households, care homes, and working in community hospitals. To not receive this bonus has been incredibly disappointing for so many frontline people delivering NHS community services. Like other health groups have also been processing, including some bank staff who provided a temporary cover to the trust to fill rota gaps. The Royal College of Nursing has also been campaigning on behalf of members and GP practices, and some members of the Unite Union have staged industrial action when employers have failed to make the payments. These include cleaners, porters, and other NHS facilities staff who demonstrated at the Department of Health this week. Separate payrolls and deals have been agreed in Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. A spokesperson for the Department of Health said, while these staff are contractually eligible for the payments, the independent organisations are responsible for making. As outlined in the guidance, the outcome of applications made by individual organisations for additional funding will be known by the end of the financial year. Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. Some homeowners are considering smaller properties and longer term mortgages as affordability is squeezed according to two surveys. A quarter of mortgage holders aged under 30 who started their loan early this year chose a 35-year term, credit reference agency Experience said. That is an increase from 10% in January 2020, it said. It comes as Nationwide Building Society said average property values were 5.3% lower than a year ago. Property prices have been pushed down as buyers face mortgage rates higher than they might have hoped or planned for. The average UK house price of £257,808 in September was around £14,500 lower than in the same month a year earlier. Robert Gardner, Nationwide's chief economist, said there are signs that more buyers are looking towards smaller, less expensive properties, with transaction volumes for flats holding up better than any other property types. This may be because affordability for flats has held up relatively better as they experienced less price increase over the pandemic period. Average prices in September were unchanged compared with the previous month, according to Nationwide. The Building Society bases its survey data on its own mortgage lending, so the survey does not include those who purchase homes with cash or buy-to-let deals. According to the latest available official data, cash buyers currently account for over a third of housing sales. Nationwide said that someone earning an average income and purchasing the typical first-time buyer home with a 20% deposit would spend 38% of their take-home pay on their monthly mortgage payment. This is higher than the long-run average of 29%. Experience said some younger buyers were looking for a longer-term mortgage, This would reduce the monthly repayments, but mean the loan would take longer to pay off and be more expensive in the long run. James Jones, Head of Consumer Affairs at Experian, said, with high interest rates increasing the pressure on borrowers, young people may feel like they have been locked in. Ways to save money on your mortgage. Overpay it now if possible. If you still have some time on a low fixed rate deal, your mortgage could work harder for you now. Putting money in a savings account can build up and also earn interest to help to pay down some of the mortgage ahead of fixing a new deal. Switch to interest only. If you have an interest-only mortgage, it means you are only paying the interest on the amount borrowed, and you're not paying down the size of the debt. But moving to an interest-only mortgage can keep your monthly payments affordable. Downsize. This is possibly not a realistic option for a growing family or for the owners of a small flat. But for older mortgage customers whose children have flown the nest, setting up and buying a smaller property could reduce the mortgage size. Auditing giant KPMG has been handed a record fine over exceptional failures in its accounting work for Carillion, the construction giant which collapsed in 2018. The Financial Reporting Council, which regulates accountants, said the £21 million fine was due to the number, range and seriousness of issues in KPMG's work. Carillion's failure cost thousands of jobs and 450 building projects. KPMG's UK chief executive said the FRC's findings were damning. "I'm very sorry that these failings happened in our firm," said John Holt. "It is clear to me that our audit work on Carillion was very bad over an extended period. In many areas, some of our former partners and employees simply didn't do their job properly. Carillion collapsed with debts in excess of £1.5 billion, leaving projects including Liverpool's Royal Hospital and the £745 million Aberdeen Bypass project unfinished, as well as contracts in prisons, hospitals and with the army unfulfilled. KPMG vetted the company's accounts repeatedly from 2014 to 2017 and failed to spot its spiralling problems. Looking back through these audits, the FRC said it had found an unusually large number of breaches of relevant requirements. KPMG had failed to gather enough appropriate evidence to enable it to conclude that Carillion's financial statements were true and fair. It also failed to conduct its audit work with an adequate degree of professional skepticism, even when statements and estimates by Carillion's management team appeared unreasonable or inconsistent. The FRC said Carillion, a major construction firm with around 12,000 staff, had been a very important client for KPMG and key members of its audit team, which created a risk to their objectivity. It singled out Peter Meehan, a former KPMG partner who no longer works for the firm, saying he and his team had occasionally signed off audit reports before completing all of the work involved. He has personally been fined £500,000, reduced to £350,000 to reflect his cooperation with investigators. Another partner, Darren Turner, has been fined £100,000, which was reduced to £70,000 for failures in a 2013 audit. In both cases, the FRC said the men had not been dishonest, although Mr. Meehan's team had occasionally made intentional, deliberate or reckless mistakes. The regulator has said that the breaches undermined the credibility and public trust in the auditing process. The collapse of Carillion had a significant and painful impact on employees, pensioners, investors, critical infrastructure projects, local communities and taxpayers. FRC boss Richard Moriarty said, "Our investigation concludes this was a textbook case study in failure." Mr. Holt said junior colleagues at KPMG had been badly let down by leaders at the firm and he was upset and angry. "As an auditor, I simply cannot defend the work that we did on Carillion. As the chief executive of KPMG, I am determined that we face up to this failure and I am absolutely committed to continue to work with my colleagues across the business to ensure that nothing like this can happen again." KPMG was last year told to pay £14 million for misleading the FRC about its work for Carillion. In 2021, the government began legal action to ban 8 former Carillion directors from holding senior boardroom positions. Last week, the former Carillion boss Richard Howson was banned by regulators from being a director of a UK business for 8 years. Restrictions on American XL bully-type dogs have come into force in Scotland. Owners of the breed, which have been linked to a series of attacks across the UK, risk fine for failing to muzzle the animals and keep them on a lead in pub. The abandonment of breeding, exchanging or selling of the dogs has also been banned. It means Scotland has fallen in line with England and Wales in imposing controls of XL bullies. Owners of the dogs will still have to apply for an exemption certificate before the 31st of July, which includes having them microchipped and neutered. Anyone convicted of breaching the new safeguards could face up to 6 months in jail and a fine of up to £5,000. The new rules come into effect just days after police shot a dangerously out of control dog in East Kilbride when it injured 3 people. The legislation was introduced following concerns over an influx of XL bullies to Scotland since the UK government was in controls on the dogs south of the border last year. Owners in England and Wales were ordered to muzzle their dogs from the 31st of January, while an exemption certificate has been required since the 1st of February. The dogs have been linked to the death of Esther Martin in Jaywick, near Clacton-on-Sea, Essex, earlier in the month. First Minister Humza Yousaf initially said similar rules were not required in Scotland before announcing that the Scottish Government would largely replicate the restrictions. The Scottish Government said the laws introduced by the UK Government created a loophole which led to people in England and Wales moving exile bullies north order. An old charity, the Scottish SPCA, has said they were aware of at least 60 exile bullies being brought to Scotland, but the true number is not known. Scotland's Community Safety Minister, Siobhan Brown, has denied claims by some exile bully owners that the government's response is disproportionate. We don't really have exact figures on the number of exile bully dogs yet have come up, but of course that raises concerns for communities, but also for animal welfare because you have dogs coming up in vans. We don't know anything about the history, so it's about a balance between the two. This is legislation that we have put into a corner to follow, unfortunately, but we are not doing it on the same timescale as the UK government, and I'm hoping as we move forward to the second stage that we learn lessons from England and Wales and improve it to dog owners. Separate legislation which will consider details about being able to rehome a dog if the owner dies or other circumstances which may lead to a dog needing to be rehomed will be considered at a later date. Bodies including the British Veterinary Association and the Scottish SPCA disagree with the ban. The Scottish SPCA's Mike Flynn said the Scottish Government originally made the correct call as far as I'm concerned. Banning any individual breed, or in this case type, is not going to guarantee public safety. Every accident could be preventable with proper education and proper responsible ownership. 4 dogs, 2 of which are confirmed to be exile bodies, are now due to be put down by the SSPCA. First Minister Humza Yousaf said time had been taken to speak to key parties involved in the decision and denied it had been made reactionary. He said we had to act given the announced changes by the UK government last year and announced without any consultation with Scotland. We're bringing forward regulations that I hope will stop what we saw at the beginning of this year when we saw transfer of exile bully dogs from England and Wales to Scotland. We don't want that to be Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. The family of a woman who was murdered by her estranged husband say they are overjoyed that parental rights laws will be changed in her name. Jade Ward, aged 27, was stabbed and strangled in her home in Shotton, Flintshire by Russell Marsh in 2021. Her mother said she was proud of everyone who helped campaign to strip parental rights from Marsh, who was jailed for at least 25 years. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said it was important after an awful crime. Under current laws, killers need to be consulted on decisions affecting their children, such as health, education and travel. Mr Sunak told BBC Breakfast that the Jade's Law announcement would make a difference. People will remember that awful crime and we're going to change that, said Mr Sunak. It shouldn't be the case that if someone murders their partner, they still have rights over their children. Miss Ward's mum, Karen Robinson, said knowing that he had rights and he was sending messages through his lawyer, making it known he's still around and still in control was horrible. I'm just so proud of everybody who's been a part of Jade's Law's campaign, the people who signed the petition, people who sent supportive messages, people who stopped us in the street. We were going through such trauma, but I couldn't leave Jade's death in vain, she said. Jade was such a beautiful soul who has left such a legacy for other families. We're hoping that once it's all up and running, a spouse considering murdering the other parent, if they know they'll lose their rights, if that stops them, that's a family saved. Today it's all about Jade, her personality, her whackloads, her red lipstick she was known for. She was one of a kind and she will continue to be one of a kind. Marsh is serving a life sentence but continuously contacted the Ward family, photographs and school reports. Jade Ward had previously been known as Jade Marsh. Miss Ward's parents, Karen Robinson and Paul Ward, have been campaigning for a change in the law since her murder. Edwin Duggan, a friend of the Ward family and campaigner for Jade's Law, said he felt overjoyed but also shocked following previous setbacks. There was a lot of restraint on the Ministry of Justice side. They thought there was enough legislation would suffice. Anyone could apply to have parental responsibility removed. Our argument was they shouldn't have it in the first place. When this goes through, I know it will save lives. Families in the future will not have to go through what Karen and Paul had. The announcement was welcomed by Mark Tammy, the Labour MP for Allen and Deeside, who has been supporting the family's campaign. He said, I'm delighted that the government has finally changed their mind, despite telling me for so long that it couldn't be done. What was the Jade's Law petition? An online petition got more than 130,000 signatures and triggered a parliamentary debate. In July, an amendment to a bill to suspend the rights of killer parents in jail was turned down by MPs. The Ministry of Justice said legislation was already in place for judges to effectively remove all rights and powers from a parent who has murdered the other, but it added it was eager to go further. Justice Secretary Alex Chalk will outline plans to introduce Jade's Law at the Conservative conference later on Tuesday. He said the campaign had exposed an injustice in the system. Murderers who kill their partners should not be able to manipulate and control their children from behind bars, which is why we're fixing the law to protect families from this appalling behaviour. The new legislation will introduce an automatic suspension of parental responsibility while any mother or father is serving time for killing the person they shared their responsibility with. It means the burden will no longer be on family members to apply it to the family court to ask for the parental rights of the killer to be removed. There will be an exemption for parents who kill their partner in a relationship with a history of domestic abuse. The measures will be introduced to Parliament as part of the Victims and Prisoners Bill before the end of the year. Reddit is moving forward with a plan to sell shares to the public almost 20 years after its start as an online message board. The company publicly filed for an initial public offering IPO with US financial regulators on Thursday. The document does not say how much money the firm is hoping to raise by listing on the New York Stock Exchange, but it provides a glimpse of the firm's operations, including its struggles to turn its online popularity into profit. The site is a forum where users can post questions and comment on topics that interest them. It has become known for its memes, candid conversations, and the ability of its members to mass together and propel the share price of unlikely companies. More than 76 million people on average visited every day in December 2023, drawn by features like its recurring Ask Me Anything threads, in which participants ranging from anonymous nobodies to former US President Barack Obama field questions. It was valued at around $10 billion in private fundraising round in 2021, where the company has recorded losses every year since its start, including more than $90 million last year. In the filing, Reddit said it had not started trying to make money seriously until 2018. It reported $804 million in revenue last year, up more than 20% from 2022. Advertising accounted for nearly all of the revenue, but a note to prospective investors, Chief Executive Steve Huffman said he was excited about opportunities to make a platform a venue that commence for commerce and license its content to AI companies. The company on Thursday said it was expanding its partnership with Google, which is licensing its content to train its artificial intelligence tools. "I've never been more excited about Reddit's future than I am right now," Mr. Huffman wrote. "We have many opportunities to grow both the platform and the business, the latter through advertising, monetizing, comments, commerce, and all the platform and licensing data." Reddit's IPO would be the first by a social media company since Pinterest in 2019. It comes as financial markets in the US are regularly notching new highs, buoyed by optimism over the economy and a new wave of growth powered by artificial intelligence. Reuters said Reddit, which filed private paperwork for an IPO in late 2021, was expected to try to sell nearly 10% of its shares in the listing. The company has said it hopes the move will give users an opportunity to take a more literal ownership platform. It is reserving some of its shares for its most prolific users on Reddit. The company's plans to go public have unsurprisingly drawn notice, and the reception has been mixed. "No way I'm touching this with a 10-foot pole," wrote one user, warning of the risk of bots infecting the site, whilst another posed the question, "Reddit IPO meme on the stage." Reddit was founded in 2005 by Mr. Huffman and Alexis Ohanian, also known as the husband of tennis champion Serena Williams. Backers have included venture capital giant Andreessen Horowitz and China's Tencent Holdings, as well as rapper Snoop Dogg. The Home Office has released one of its most politically sensitive datasets, with a note attached describing some of the figures as dodgy. The note, spotted by BBC Verify, was on our Home Office spreadsheet about the number of people arrested after being stopped and searched by police. It said a reason for arrest data is dodgy, so maybe we shouldn't publish it. The Home Office would not inform the BBC why the figures were considered dodgy. The note attached to a Home Office spreadsheet released on the 26th of September was removed after they got in contact. The figures show the number of people stopped and searched in England and Wales under Section 60. This means that police do not need to have reasonable suspicion to carry out a search. The orders give the police powers to stop people within a designated area, such as the Notting Hill Carnival. The arrests were broken down into those for offensive weapons or those for other reasons. Attached to the offensive weapons column was a note from an author asking whether the figures should be published. The official data said that in the year ending March 31st, 2023, there had been 4,280 searches under Section 60, with 43 people found to be carrying offensive weapons. As a result, there have been 52 arrests for carrying offensive weapons. We don't know why there were more arrests than people found to be carrying offensive weapons. This has not been the case in previous years, according to the available data. They asked the office about this and about the attached note. It did not respond to these questions, but instead referred to another note accompanying the data, which said data quality checks showed that some forces will, by default, provide the same reason for arrest as for the reason for search, or they record all reasons for arrest as other. For the first time, this data has been presented in the summary tables as experimental statistics to denote that there are known data quality issues. The Home Office says it has been collecting the reason for arrest data to understand how effectively the police are using its stop and search powers. But Dr. Simon Harding, director of the National Centre for Gang Research, says that different forces have different ways and procedures for recording their data. There is data coming in from 43 different constabularies, and there are varying levels of quality, he said. These things ought to be ironed out before they get to the Home Office. They showed the note to Habib Kadiri, director of Stopwatch, a campaign group which focuses on police stop and search and the over-policing of marginalised communities. He said the comment in question is indicative of a long history of questionable recording practices by police officers. Mr. Kadiri said police forces should be forced by law to provide comparable data, adding, "We have received anecdotal evidence in the past to suggest that searches are not recorded properly or at all. in ways that indicate the issue of data quality may be more than simply a technical matter. Labour MP Dame Diana Johnson, who chairs Parliament's Home Affairs Select Committee, has said this highlights difficulties in getting standardised data, and it does worry me because the Home Office has got into bother before with its stats and data. You would think they'd want to be careful to check and double-check all of this before it goes out. The Office for Statistics Regulation said it recognised the Home Office could be clearer that the data was experimental, but it was common practice to publish newly introduced breakdowns with official statistics. The boss of the world's most valuable chip maker, NVIDIA, said artificial intelligence AI is at a tipping point as it announced record sales. The technology giant reported that revenues surged by 265% to $22 billion or £17.4 billion in the 3 months to the 28th of January compared to a year earlier. The year as a whole, turnover more than doubled to $60.9 billion. Accelerated computing and generative AI have hit a tipping point, said NVIDIA Chief Executive Jensen Huang. Demand is surging worldwide across companies, industries, and nations. NVIDIA also forecasts a 233% jump in its quarterly revenues for current quarter, beating analyst estimates. There was a lot riding on this last quarter, and they actually absolutely knocked it out the park, Bob O'Donnell of Tech Analysis Research told the BBC. We're starting to see mainstream usage of AI, he added, highlighting that AI is no longer only used by specialized technology companies. In addition to its AI chips, sales at the firm's data centers have grown rapidly. Its data center business has contributed the vast majority of its revenues in the most recent quarter after growing more than fivefold over the last year. NVIDIA said the gross profits in the final 3 months of its financial year rose by 338% to $16.8 billion. Annual gross profit rose by 188% to $44.3 billion. However, the company said it faced several challenges, including constraints on its supply chains. The US has also tightened its restrictions on trade China, the world's second largest economy. Oskar Diskaya, a senior analyst at Swissquote, has said that NVIDIA's results have been unusually amazing, but she added that NVIDIA could face difficulties in addition to restrictions in China. NVIDIA will see challenges on the way up because first, the revenue growth will likely stabilize and the euphoria regarding these growth perceptions will level out. The company is also likely to face competition and regulation issues, and it could be constrained by their own capacity to respond to their first surging demand. AI's public profile has risen sharply since launch in 2022 of ChatGPT, which was developed by Microsoft-backed OpenAI. ChatGPT and other similar systems use huge amounts of data to create convincing human-like responses to user queries. They're expected to drastically change the way people search for information online. NVIDIA's stock market value has soared by 225% over the last year, making it one of the most valuable companies in the US. Its share price jumped by more than 9% in extended New York trading. Nicki Minaj has apologized to fans after postponing a concert in Manchester following her arrest in the Netherlands. The rapper, aged 41, was due to play at the city's Co-op Live Arena on Saturday, but had to cancel at the last minute after she was held on suspicion of exporting drugs. She was fined €350 or £300 or $380 by Dutch police and allowed to continue her journey. Announcing that she would now play the Manchester venue next Monday, she posted on social media, "I apologise for all the inconvenience this has caused. I really hope you can make the June 3rd show. It'll all be really special." She added, Ticketmaster will be contacting fans who are at Saturday's cancelled show, who she described as a class act. Minaj said she spent 5 to 6 hours in custody before being allowed to fly from Amsterdam's Schiphol airport. Dutch prosecutors told local media she was carrying 30 to 100 grams of cannabis, but Minaj said the pre-rolls belonged to her security guard. It's technically against the law to possess, sell, juice drugs in the Netherlands, but the country operates a policy of tolerance towards the sale and possession of small amounts of some drugs. I'll have the lawyers and God take it from here, though, the Stephen bass singer posted on X Sunday. They sure did know exactly how to hurt me today, but this too shall pass. About 20,000 fans had been in the Co-op Arena waiting for a show to start on Saturday, before promoter Live Nation announced at around 9:40 p.m. British Standard Time that the gig would be postponed. Many of her fans, known as the Barbs, had been left upset after waiting 4 hours and having travelled from other parts of the country. On Sunday night, defiantly, Minaj took her Pink Friday the second world tour to Birmingham. The most important thing was to say, "From the bottom of my heart, thank you for being here tonight," she told fans at Resorts World Arena. A lifeboat crew in Devon was tasked with an 11-hour call-out over the bank holiday weekend after a motor yacht got into difficulty. The Exmouth all-weather lifeboat was launched at about 12:42 British Standard Time on Sunday after the Coast Guard received a distress call from a vessel 26 miles away, 41 kilometres east of Berry Head. Exmouth RNLI said 6 crew members tackled challenging sea conditions to reach the vessel. The occupants of the yacht were experiencing seasickness and were eventually towed for more than 5 hours to the nearest point of safety in Torquay. Exmouth RNLI said the sea conditions were challenging with 3 metre 110-foot swells, and therefore the passage took 75 minutes. Upon arrival, our volunteer crew assessed the situation and established that a vessel's automatic fire suspension system had triggered and was preventing the engines from operating. Given the challenging conditions and the vessel's occupants, 2 adults and 3 children, who were suffering seasickness, the coxswain decided that towing the vessel to the nearest point of safety was the most appropriate course of action. Exmouth RNLI said, upon finally arriving, the vessel was safely secured alongside, and our crew then made the journey back to Exmouth to refuel and prepare the lifeboat again for service. The very tired volunteers finally left the lifeboat station and headed for their beds 11 hours after the first pager. The UK's oldest Lido remains closed after flooding caused significant damage. After years of campaigning and fundraising, this summer was set to be the first time in decades swimmers could bathe at Cleveland Pools in Bath. But the Lido has not been able to open for the spring season after heavy rain damaged vital equipment in the plant room. The team that runs the site cannot move forward with repairs until investigations establish who is responsible and liable. Cleveland Pools Trust Chairman Paul Simons described it as a complex situation. Whilst designed to resist flood damage, water did penetrate waterproof plant room in January, and vital equipment, including the electrical installations, were damaged. As a result, investigations are underway to establish responsibilities and liabilities. Until that process has been concluded, works to repair or replace the damaged equipment cannot proceed. First opened in 1815, the Lido was saved due to a 20-year campaign led by volunteers. The famous site closed to the public in the 1980s, but reopened for the first time in September following years of fundraising. The overall cost of the project was £9.3 million, with £6.47 million coming from the National Lottery Heritage Fund. Preparations are underway at major child crossing points for a new automated European Union border IT system due to start this October, despite fears of queue chaos for holidaymakers. On the entry-exit system EES, non-EU nationals, including Brits, will have to register biometric information the first time they cross the border. This has prompted concerns there might be huge delays as a result. But tens of millions of pounds are being spent on equipment and processing areas at Dover's Ferry Port, Eurostar's London St Pancras terminus, and Eurotunnel's Folkestone site. Dover plans to process coaches separately to cars and eventually reclaim a dock from the sea to create more space. Eurostar will also expand into new areas of St Pancras Station to fit in new kiosks. People taking flights will provide the biometric information when they land European airports. However, at Dover's Ferry Port, Folkestone and London St Pancras, an arrangement of dual border controls means French border officers currently check and stamp passports as people leave the UK. The new EES process will also take place on British soil at these sites. Passports will no longer need to be stamped, but fingerprints and a photo will need to be taken. Travellers will also need to answer some questions about their journey. As the registration process will need to be done in person at port or station, there have been repeated warnings of bottlenecks as a result. The UK Foreign Secretary Dave Cameron recently added his voice to concerns, telling a committee of MPs he was really worried about more delays. Queuing at busy times is already an issue for space-constrained Dover. The port's chief executive, Doug Bannister, has said its plans aimed to minimise dwell times, queues and of course congestion out on the road network and throughout the town. When EES kicks in, coaches which carry dozens of passengers will go to the Western Docks away from main check-in areas. Coach halls will be built there with a new kiosk to register details. Mr. Bannister said passengers will then proceed through the border in the Western Docks, reboard their coach. The coach will then get sealed and it will come down here to the ferry terminal. As long as the seal's intact, the coach will proceed directly around to check-in. There will be a different process for cars and other vehicles to start with. They will file into the usual lanes upon arrival at port. The port boss said they will be met by one of our agents with a tablet and asked for their details. A canopy will be put up over the lanes for weather protection. The time it takes to go through border controls is likely to rise from 45 to 90 seconds to a couple of minutes or more per person when registering for EES. By summer next year, the hope is to relocate that car processing to the Western Docks too. This relies on an old dock being filled in to create more land. The port plans to create more holding space around the port by September 2027. Coach companies are worried about the new system. Rosalind Coaches is based in Cornwall. By the time its vehicles reach Dover, they have already been on the road for hours. Commercial manager James Church said any extra delays at Dover would not only affect customers' experience, but would also carry more costs because drivers could hit their hours limit. If you've got a full coach with 50 to 70 people on board, that takes quite a long time anyway. We're quite concerned. He added that the business didn't want EES to end up putting a negative thought on continental coach crossings. Implementing EES at London St Pancras means a big change for Eurostar passengers taking trains to Paris and beyond. The number of border controls points in the existing departure areas will be doubled. Space constraints won't leave room for the EES kiosks as well, so 49 of them will be installed at other points around the station, which is owned by HS1 and used by several domestic rail operators too. A coffee shop near the main station entrance will make way for the main kiosk area. 2 other zones will include an overflow room on St Pancras mezzanine level. Simon Lejeune, Eurostar's Chief Stations and Security Officer, insists these arrangements with extra staff on hand to assist customers meant people would not need to turn up any earlier for a train than they currently do. With our setup, it will take between 45 to 90 minutes check-in time, he said. We've really planned intensely for this, making sure that we've got the best arrangement for our customers. Eurostar's preparations are costing the equivalent of £8.5 million. Eurotunnel, which operates freight and vehicle shuttles through the Channel Tunnel, is spending the equivalent of £70 million building processing zones, where people will queue in their cars to use automatic machines. It will also hire 70 new passenger assistant staff on each side of the channel. The company's boss, Jan Lerick, has said getting it through border controls would take 5 minutes to 7 minutes longer, but insisted the extra lanes and technology would avoid queues spilling out onto the roads. The EU has been developing an app to enable EES registration to be started from home, but it's not expected to be ready for the start of the new system. However, for a 6-month transition period, the EU is expected to allow the checks to be reduced in some circumstances if bad queues build up. A spokesperson for the UK government said it was working closely with the EU and member states to minimise any impact at our shared borders with Europe. They added, "We are also working closely with the Kent Resilience Forum, as well as with port authorities, ferry operators and industry to develop robust contingency plans to ensure they are prepared to minimise the risk of delays." Hello and welcome to the News by Standards. The Conservatives have promised to raise the tax-free pension allowance by a triple lot plus if they win the general election. Under plans, the personal allowance for pensioners will increase at least 2.5%, or in line with the highest of earnings or inflation. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said the scheme shows we are on the side of pensioners, who the Tories say will save £275 by 2030, said the government's plans were not credible. At the moment, the state pension already rises in line with whichever is the highest average earnings, wages, or by 2.5%. This meant in April the state pension rose by 8.5%. Both Conservatives and Labour are committed to keeping policy designed to ensure pensions keep up with rising prices and wages, but currently income tax thresholds have been frozen since 2021. The independent watchdog, the Office for Budget Responsibility, OBR, has estimated that this will create 4 million extra taxpayers by 2028 and take 3 million into other higher rate tax. Income tax is paid on money received via pensions. By 2027, the state pension is expected to be higher than the tax-free personal allowance, according to the OBR. That would mean many millions more pensioners paying income tax, according to the Tories. Charities have been reporting heightened concern among pensioners who fear being dragged into paying income tax. Both Age UK and Independent Age saying that they have seen an increase in calls to their helplines in recent weeks from pensioners confused about the issue. Under the new scheme, the state pension will always be below the tax-free threshold. The Conservatives claim that the plans will cost £2.4 billion a year by 2029 to 2030, funded by the previously announced strategy to raise £6 billion annually through improving tax collection and working down on tax avoidance and evasion. A similar policy existed in the past but was scrapped by former Conservative Chancellor George Osborne. Speaking to the BBC Radio's For Today programme, Paul Johnson from the IFS, public spending think tank, said the cost policy was not a very big number, but these promises are beginning to add up. What this is a demonstration of priorities, and the priority is to take a few 100,000 pensioners out of income tax. Mr Sunak said, "I passionately believe that those who have worked hard all their lives should have peace of mind and security in retirement. to Conservatives' triple lock, pensions have risen by £900 this year, and now we will cut their taxes by around £100 next year. This bold action demonstrates we are on the side of pensioners. The alternative is Labour wagging everyone in receipt of the full state pension into income tax for the first time in history. Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds did not set out whether Labour would roll out a similar move, but said he didn't think the Conservatives' plan was credible. He said the government under Mr Sunak had frozen thresholds for income tax, and that their proposal contradicts what they've done in the last few years. Work and Pension Secretary Mel Stride defended previously freezing the thresholds, arguing it happened at a very different time, citing COVID and increasing inflation. What we've been doing since is reducing taxes, he added. Lib Dem Treasury spokeswoman Sarah Olney said the Conservative Party has hammered pensioners of unfair tax hikes and broken their word on the triple lock. People won't be fooled by yet another empty promise from Rishi Sunak after this record of failure. People living in parts of Staffordshire have been asked to look out for dark, shining rocks that stand out after a meteorite was suspected to have landed in the country. A bright fireball seen over the Midlands in the early hours of the 6th of May have dropped a meteorite somewhere around Blyth Bridge and Otter Exeter, according to the UK Fireball Alliance, UK4. People were asked by scientists not to touch it with their bare hands if they found it. Teams of researchers from several universities have already searched fields around Blyth Bridge and Otter Exeter but were yet to make a discovery. UK4 estimated 500 grams or 1.1 pounds of meteorite landed southeast of Stoke-on-Trent and would be about 5 to 10 centimetres or 2 to 4 inches wide, black or brown in colour, and might have a glassy outer surface. Ashley King hopes someone living or working in the area might find the rock, but asked people to be respectful while searching. We don't want anyone taking risks looking for it or going into areas where you shouldn't. Rich Baggerly is chairman of a greenhouse factory in Cresswell, a village in the middle of the search area. Scientists from the University of Glasgow asked to look around his land in the days after the sighting. They were very excited and we were just amazed that such a thing could happen in our little corner of Staffordshire. Anyone who suspected they had found the meteorite were asked to contact UK4 or the Natural History Museum. A spokesperson for UK4 said people should not reach out for the rock with their bare hands to avoid contamination. They suggested picking it up in aluminium foil or a clean, dry sandwich bag. Shop prices are back to normal levels as the cost of furniture, televisions and other non-food items have fallen according to a UK retail industry body. Prices rose at an annual rate of 0.6% in May, down from 0.8% in the previous month, according to the British Retail Consortium and research firm Nielsen IQ. The figures also showed that food inflation fell for the 13th month in a row to 3.2%. Household budgets have come under pressure as prices soared in the wake of the pandemic and the Ukraine war pushed up the cost of energy. The ease in that shop price rises was helped by slowing up food inflation, with fresh food inflation falling to its lowest level since November 2021. Helen Dickinson, chief executive of the BRC, said, "While the cost of food has continued to rise, although at a slower pace, prices of non-food items have been falling. This included furniture, TVs and audio equipment, which it said have seen their prices cut by retailers ahead of the Euros football tournament. Unusually wet weather has also been credited with helping to ease prices. The unseasonable weather has dampened retail sales, so lower prices look set to continue, and promotional activity is likely to increase drive demand." Mike Watkins, head of Retailer and Business Insight at Nielsen IQ, has said, "Inflation is the increase in the price of something over time. For example, if a bottle of milk costs £1, but is £1.05 a year later, then annual milk inflation is 5%. Erica Moore, founder and owner of Etiquette Leaf Tea Company in Edinburgh, said it felt like price rises have stabilised since the start of the year. "The prices that we've got at the moment are higher than they used to be across the board, but it does feel like there's a leveling off, at least for the next little while. While it might offer some breathing space, he added that different factors can affect tea prices, such as harvest variability and weather. A leading think tank has issued a stark warning about the financial challenges awaiting the next government. The Institute for Fiscal Studies, IFS, says the state of public finances hangs over the election campaign like a dark cloud. It warns more tax rises or cuts to public services could lie ahead. It calls for an open and robust discussion about how all the parties will be tackling these. Both Labour and the Conservatives have committed to get debt falling as a share of national income. All the major parties would likely have a similar form of self-imposed rules in order to keep the government's costs of borrowing from financial markets down. but the independent IFS claims that high interest payments on existing debt and low expected economic growth could make reducing future debt more difficult to achieve, whoever is in government, than in any parliament since at least the 1950s without further measures. To meet existing rules, the current Chancellor had already penciled in what could amount to potential cuts in funding of some public services, such as justice or higher education, on more than 10% in coming years, once population growth and inflation is taken into account. Taxes are also on track to absorb a larger share of the nation's income, up from 36.5% in the current tax year to 37.1% in 2028 to 2029, in particular as the thresholds at which different rates of taxes on income are frozen, instead of rising with inflation as they have traditionally. As such, the IFS says that barring a dramatic improvement in growth, the next government could face three broad choices: to go forward with the spending squeeze for services, raise taxes further, or increase annual borrowing, which could risk preventing total debt from falling. Paul Johnson, director of the IFS, said money is tight. We could get miraculously lucky with growth and escape having to make these tough choices, but we might not. Just because thousands of English and Scottish football fans are crossing their fingers and hoping for the best this summer doesn't mean that the next cabinet should do the same. He added that the next government should not wait until it enters office to open the books, adding that they are published and available for anyone to inspect. We should use them as the basis for an open and robust discussion during the election campaign. The IFS's warning echoes one in which it made after the budget in March, when it spoke of conspiracy of silence. That meant major parties were falling and failing to acknowledge potential challenges and spell out how it would tackle those. All parties will be putting forward policies they say will make voters better off in coming weeks. But with most economists coming to a similar conclusion, as the IFS, such policies will be made against a backdrop of constrained public finances, which may mean tough choices ahead that may ultimately impact voters' fortunes. Responding to the findings of the IFS, Darren Jones, Shadow Chief Secretary to the Treasury, said that the Labour Party was under no illusions about the scale of the challenge it may face. The country will only see the full scale of the challenge if we win the election. We've promised to deliver an immediate injection of cash into our public services, and will then get to work to turn the country round. Dozens of business leaders have signed a letter endorsing the Labour Party's economic plans ahead of the 4th of July general election, saying it is time for a change. In a letter published in Tuesday's Times newspaper, 121 founders, chief executives and former leaders at a range of financial services, retail and manufacturing firms say Labour has changed and wants to work with business on long-term growth. It comes as Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves is due to deliver her first major speech of the election campaign to business supporters, including some former Conservative backers in the East Midlands later. She's expected to say she will lead the most pro-growth Treasury in our country's history. Labour is borrowing from the Conservatives' playbook in getting business leaders to endorse their economic plans. At the 2015 election, 100 core leaders endorsed the Conservatives. One of those, Malcolm Walker, the founder of supermarket chain Iceland, will now endorse Labour instead. Other former Tory business letter signatories have told BBC News they will keep their counsel and amid disappointment over Liz Truss's mini-budget, the Brexit deal and a general expectation of a change of government. Among those who have signed the letter in the Times is the TV chef and restaurateur Tom Kerridge, some chief executives of small companies, former Heathrow Airport chief executive John Holland Kay, JD Sports chairman Andrew Higginson, and Wikipedia founder Jimmy Wales. Speaking to the BBC's Today programme on Tuesday, Work and Pension Secretary Mel Stride pointed out that no chief executives of the UK's very largest FTSE 100 companies were among the signatories. Following the UK's exit from the European Union, many household names learned that taking sides in a key election period may annoy their customers. It is also unclear how representative this group of Labour backers are of business in general and their sectors in particular. Ms Reeves believes this public display of support for Labour will demonstrate its credibility to the public. Some Conservative business figures said there have been no effort similar to 2015 to organise a Tory business endorsement letter. Chancellor Jeremy Hunt's advisers are known to be warning businesses about what they say is a move to French-style workers' rights should Labour win. Some top retailers have expressed concern about the plan, including a repeal of Conservative anti-strike laws. But Mr Wales of Wikipedia told the BBC's Today programme, "We're not talking about an extreme left-wing government by any means. We're talking about a sensible, solid, centrist government." He added that he is very convinced by Labour. "I've talked to Rachel Reeves and talked to Keir. they're not going to veer off into something completely mad, but they're going to run the country in a much more sensible way. Chief Secretary to the Treasury at Trot said Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives have a clear plan that businesses can rely on. Took bold action to deliver the biggest business tax cut in modern history. The Lib Dems told BBC News that businesses are crying out for stability and certainty after years of the Conservatives' chaos and mismanagement. The Liberal Democrats would launch an industrial strategy to boost investment and reform the broken business rates system to support our high streets, the spokesperson added. The Green Party of England and Wales has said it would invest in the technologies we need to ensure a sustainable and secure future. We need to ensure our economy works in a way that safeguards our climate and enables nature to flourish, co-leader Adrian Ramsden said. The Scottish National Party's Drew Hendry accused Labour of ignoring the most fundamental reason for the economic decline of the United Kingdom. Britain is broken and Brexit broke it, adding only the SNP will fight for a future back at the heart of the European Union. Plaid Cymru Treasury spokesman Ben Lake said Wales needs economic plans to break the economic doom loop we're in, and this party would invest in the Welsh economy to drive growth and reduce inequalities. The boss of Singapore Airlines, Goh Choon Phong, has thanked the carrier's staff for their hard work in the aftermath of the severe turbulence incident in which a British man died and tens more people were injured. The last 5 days have been immensely challenging for everyone at Singapore Airlines, Mr. Goh wrote in a memo. The message comes flight SQ321 from London to Singapore, diverted to Bangkok, Thailand after an incident over the Indian Ocean on the 21st May. Boeing B777ER was flown back to Singapore on Sunday. Agility, dedication and team spirit were evident during this period, Mr. Goh's memo said. On behalf of the Singapore Airlines board and the entire management team, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart. Flight SQ321 diverted to Bangkok last Tuesday due to a medical emergency with 211 passengers and 18 crew members aboard. Jeff Kitchen, a 73-year-old from Gloucestershire, died from a suspected heart attack after the plane was hit by turbulence, while more than 100 other people were treated at a hospital in the Thai capital. Passengers and crew who were not seriously injured in the incident were flown to Singapore early the following day. The memo also said the airline is continuing to support injured passengers and staff, and that Mr. Goh had personally visited the hospital last week. In a video address the day after the incident, Mr. Goh offered his deepest condolences to Mr. Kitchen's family and apologised to everyone affected. Singapore Prime Minister Wong also sent his condolences to the family and loved ones deceased, adding that his country was working closely with Thai authorities. He said Singapore's Transport Safety Investigation Bureau would conduct a thorough investigation into the incident. Accidents involving Singapore Airlines are rare, with the carrier consistently ranking among the world's safest carriers. The last fatal accident occurred in 2000 when a Boeing 747 crashed while attempting to take off from the runway at a Taiwan airport. Some 83 people of the 179 people on board were killed. David Beckham has signed a deal to be a global ambassador for AliExpress, an online retail platform owned by Chinese technology giant Alibaba. The announcement comes as the Euros football tournament is due to kick off in next month. The company did not reveal how much it is paying the former England captain. In March, AliExpress agreed an exclusive e-commerce platform partnership with European football's governing body, UEFA. Under the deal, the football superstar turned entrepreneur will be the face of AliExpress Go On More promotion, which will run during games. AliExpress is helping fans get even closer to UEFA Euro 2024 this summer by offering them great prizes as the action takes place pitch. AliExpress joins other major Chinese firms that are sponsoring the Euros, including electric vehicle maker BYD and electronics giant Vivo. Since hanging up his football boots more than a decade ago, Beckham has been linked to host brands and major sporting events. According to the Sunday Times Rich List, Beckham and his wife Victoria, a former Spice Girl and a fashion designer, have a combined fortune of £459 million or $581.6 million. After the Paris Olympics and Paralympics, the tournament is set to be the biggest sporting event of the year. A total of 2.7 million tickets were made available for the competition, which runs from the 14th of June to the 14th of July across 10 cities, including at Munich and Hamburg. According to UEFA, the 2020 Euros had a total global live television audience of 5.2 billion. The final, that England lost on penalties, was watched by 328 million people. The RAF have temporarily grounded the Battle of Britain memorial flight following the death of a pilot in a crash. Squadron leader Mark Long was killed when the Spitfire he was flying crashed in a field in Lincolnshire. Emergency crews called to the site near RAF Coningsby shortly before 1:20 p.m. British Standard Time on Saturday. The RAF said it had taken the decision to ground the aircraft while investigations take place. The spokesperson said, following the tragic accident at RAF Coningsby and while the formal investigation is ongoing, RAF has instigated a temporary pause in flying for the Battle of Britain Memorial Flight BBMF. In a statement, the RAF said squadron leader Long had been a great friend, colleague and a passionate professional aviator. Prince and Princess of Wales were among those who earlier paid tribute to the pilot. They said they were incredibly sad to learn of the death, adding their thoughts were with the pilot's family, the BB and the wider RAF. Captain Robbie Lees, commander of the RAF's Display Air Wing, said Mark was a Typhoon pilot here at RAF Coningsby, and for the last 4 years he has been a pilot of Battle of Britain Memorial Flight. In a post on Facebook, officials said the BBMF Visitor Centre would also remain closed until further notice. The BBMF planes, which include Spitfires, Hurricanes and a Lancaster bomber, are a popular sight at summer shows. A flypast has been due to take place at Lincolnshire Aviation Heritage Centre near Spilsby on Monday. A spokesperson for the Heritage Centre said a book of condolences to squadron leader Long had been placed in the chapel for visitors to sign, and they could spend a few quiet moments of reflection there. Visitors and staff at the centre held a minute's silence for the pilot. The flight had also been due to take part in a national commemorative event in Portsmouth on the 5th of June to mark 80 years since D-Day. When Nathan Wilkins moved back in with his mother and sister in 2019, he hoped it would help him save money to buy a home. But in the years since, the US housing market has been transformed by rising rents, surging home prices and a massive jump in mortgage rates, making home ownership seem ever more impossible. He and his sister are making more money than ever, the 32-year-old insurance adjuster from Utah says, but shelling out £2,500 or £1,960 a month in rent doesn't leave much left over. It's like I'm playing a game that you can't win, he says. The fact that we're being priced out just makes me want to throw up. Some frustrations are spreading, fueling dissatisfaction and contributing to widespread pessimism around the US economy that is looming over the country's upcoming election. The median home sale price in the US has jumped by nearly 30% since the end of 2019, seeing at $420,000 this spring. At a time of rising property values globally, the leap has been one of the most dramatic in the world, according to the International Monetary Fund. And that's not factoring in the added costs from higher interest rates, which now stand at roughly 7% for the 30-year fixed-rate mortgage that is typical in the US, up from about 3% in 2020. Home buyers today need an annual income of more than $100,000, well above the country's household median of about $75,000, to comfortably afford a home in most places in the US, research firms such as Zillow and Bankrate say, and face monthly payments that have roughly doubled in just 4 years. It makes me cry a bit, says Megan Halter, who started looking to buy Austin, Texas back in 2019, when banks were offering her a 30-year fixed rate of about 4.75%. She halted her research when the pandemic hit, priced out by the surge in cost of building materials and homes. She and her wife finally bought a home this year, but only after swallowing a 6.625% rate and moving 1,200 miles north to Columbus, Ohio, the spot selected from the spreadsheet she created up cities with lower costs. Housing affordability was the number one thing that we've been considering for 5 years, says the 30-year-old, who also switched jobs from the public sector to the private sector to make home buying happen. We've moved mountains to make it possible. I'm just eternally grateful that we can afford it. I know a lot of other people cannot, she adds. Just 40.1% of renters expect to ever own a home one day, according to the New York Federal Reserve. The smallest share since the bank started asking renters the question in 2014. Even homeowners whose long-term mortgages shield them from immediate financial impact and who benefit from rising property values tell pollsters that changes in the market are a source of concern as they push up property taxes and insurance costs, while making moving a less affordable prospect. Nearly 1/3 of all households now spend more than 1/3 of their income on housing. The standard cut-off affordability, the highest level since 2015, according to Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies. A recent Harris poll found more than 70% of Americans believe the housing market is only going to get worse. The issue is feeding into wider worries about rising living costs, which have jumped 20% since 2021. It is among the biggest challenges facing President Joe Biden, whose time in office has coincided with housing market's transformation and who receives dismal ratings for his handling of the economy in national polls. Challenger Donald Trump, who fares better, has sought to blame Mr. Biden for inflation, and though he does not typically call out housing specifically, he regularly spotlights skyrocketing interest rates to argue that the economy is heading in the wrong direction. Inflation has been a political noose for Biden in recent years, says Brian Connolly, a professor of business law at the University of Michigan's Ross School of Business, whose work focuses on housing issues. Housing costs are another place where people are experiencing this financial squeeze. In recent months, the White House has tried to address concerns about affordability head-on, offering proposals such as rules to limit housing costs and a $10,000 tax credit for first-time homebuyers. It marks a shift in tone after years of focusing on the economy's strengths, including low unemployment. But with few immediate levers for Mr. Biden to pull, it's not clear the efforts are resonating. His support has especially eroded among younger people, whose record turnout in 2020 helped put him in office. Voters in this demographic are least likely to own homes and most likely to see housing affordability as a top concern. I don't see any platform that purposely looks out for somebody like first-time home buyers wanting it to ease their pain, says Braden Doherty, a 30-year-old from Florida who works in manufacturing and has been checking for houses daily for 3 years. Despite a $50,000 inheritance, no debt and decent jobs, he and his wife can't find an affordable 2-bedroom near their families in the Orlando area. He says the problem of housing costs is too big to blame on any one politician or party, but the seeming lack of solutions have contributed to his wider political disillusionment. He is uncertain how he will vote in November. I'm fed up, he says. Housing is part of it. The growing outcry has raised pressure on the US Central Bank to cut interest rates to bring that relief. A move Federal Reserve Chairman Jerome Powell has said it's likely at some point, but expectations that cut would happen early this year, helping to improve the country's mood, have been steadily pushed back. This reflects concerns that progress in that lowering inflation, which was hovering at 3.4% in April, still well above the bank's 2% target, could be stalled at. Instead, since January, mortgage rates have mostly moved higher. Mimi Than, a 29-year-old who recently bought a 3-bedroom condo in the Boston, Massachusetts area, says she is facing roughly $200 more in monthly costs than when she and her husband were pre-approved for a loan in March. They did not lock in the rate then, unaware borrowing costs might shift significantly. When they returned to their lender in April after making an offer, the interest rate they were offered was 6.9%, up from 6.5%. She's hoping that they will drop back later this year, allowing them to refinance. I'm obsessively checking the rates, she says. Many analysts maintain it is only a matter of time until inflation slows down, clearing the way for a cut. They note reports by private firms that show rental increases, which play a big role in calculations of US inflation, cooling from the torrid pace of the pandemic amid a jump in apartment supply. With wages growing and increase in new homes under construction and rents and home prices rising more slowly, Woffie Devongai, senior economist at the housing site Zillow, says he sees affordability challenges easing as well, albeit not in time for November's election. It's working itself out, he says. We still have a long way to go, of course, but we're seeing some improvement, and I think we're going to see more improvement. But there's a gloomier view. With more people priced out of home ownership, rental rates may prove more resilient than expected, keeping inflation elevated. And if mortgage rates do not drop significantly, the step change in borrowing costs may act as a long-term constraint on supply. As builders pull back on homeowners who secured mortgages when rates were lower forego moving. Braden from Florida sees no easy fix from the FED, which he appears helped shape the current prices by letting rates stay unusually low in the decade after the 2008 financial crisis. No matter what happens when they raise, lower or hold them, I feel as though the next decade is probably just going to be difficult no matter what for most people. When a severe drought hit the Indian city of Kozhikode, also known as Calicut, in 2016, residents including student Swapnil Shrivastava had access to a limited amount of water each day. We rationed 2 buckets of water a day, which we collected from water taps. While he says it's not uncommon for water supply issues to impact parts of India, it was a tough month for Mr. Shrivastava and others in the region. It was a very humid area, it was unimaginable. Mr. Shrivastava was already interested in water scarcity having won a student competition in 2012 on imagining the future of water in cities, but the experience pushed him to explore solutions. One element of inspiration was from Star Wars, where there's an air-to-water device. I thought, why don't we give it a try? It was more of a curiosity project. Several years later, in 2019, the idea led him, Govinda Balaji and Venkatesh Raja, to set up Uravar Labs, a Bangalore-based startup. Their system converts air to water using atmospheric water generators that contain a liquid desiccant which absorbs moisture from the air. Using sunlight or renewable electricity, they heat the desiccant to 65 centigrade, which releases the moisture, which can then be condensed into drinking water. Mr. Shripastava says that the whole process takes about 12 hours. Today, each unit produces around 2,000 litres of drinking water. However, while his vision was to supply drinking water to communities facing water shortages, he says it wasn't financially viable. We realised the tech still needs more time to scale up and come down in costs, or someone should fund it, but we haven't found the support in India. Instead, they currently sell the water to 40 clients in the hospitality industry, who in turn use it to provide drinking water for customers. We've tried non-profit and CSR departments' corporate social responsibility, but many companies shy away from tech. They thought it wouldn't work. We had to shift to commercial consumption applications as they were ready to pay us, and it's a sustainability drive forward. Water shortages are not new, but many countries, especially in the global south, are experiencing climate change-related intense drought, flooding that contaminates water sources. More than 50% of the global population, 4 billion people, experience water shortfalls at least once a month, while by 2055, 1.8 billion people are expected to be living in countries or regions with absolute water scarcity, according to the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations. Could atmospheric water generation technology be the answer? Energy efficient, it can be powered by renewable sources. It's one way of providing a fresh source of water without the need for traditional water infrastructure, making it an attractive option in remote locations. There appears to be a market for the technology, valued at $3.4 billion or £2.7 billion in 2022. The atmospheric water generation market is expected to be worth $13.5 billion in 2032, according to a report by Global Market Insights. There are two main methods for atmospheric water generation. Firstly, there's the cooling and condensation process, which cools humid air to its dew point, forcing a water vapour to condense into liquid water. The second is a desiccant-based system, which uses hygroscopic materials to absorb moisture from the air and then release it through a heating process, he says. Through her social enterprise Magic Water, co-founder and chief executive Beth Kolge manages about 40 atmospheric water generator units across arid and semi-arid regions across Kenya, using a cooling and condensation-based techniques to capture moisture from the air. Founded in 2017, Ms. Koigi was inspired to start Magic Water after experiencing water scarcity for the first time during a drought when she was studying in Nairobi in 2016. While many visited a nearby river to fetch water for cooking, drinking and washing, Koigi says she couldn't bring herself to drink the contaminated water. It made me realise that you take for granted water as it's always there. She started looking for other water source ideas and set up a water filter company before developing an air-to-water system. Magic Water works with NGOs and humanitarian organisations, as well as being sold in stores. Magic's biggest unit produces 500 litres of water in 24 hours and is installed in schools and small communities. While there is demand for her company's system, Ms. Kogi does not see it as a permanent solution. Honestly, I feel this is not the solution to water scarcity, says Ms. Kogi. It's a temporary solution, mostly because it's not cheap. Manufacturers are focused on making air-to-water generation systems more energy efficient, says Avinash Singh, Associate Director of Research and Consulting at Global Market Insights. For instance, innovations in compressors, heat exchangers and desiccants have improved the energy efficiency of such systems. He adds that government support, subsidies or environmental regulations could drive further adoption of the technology. One development which has helped the adoption of such water systems is the move to digital payments. Headquartered in Italy, Theragon has water production units across the Middle East, Asia, Africa and South America. When we originally started with off-grid communities, it was a cash-based society, which wasn't really viable. Nowadays, it's being digitalized, says Theragon Global Business Director Stephen White. For example, the majority of Cambodia is covered by 4G, and COVID saw an explosion of e-wallets. There's much better private infrastructure and partnership. The government doesn't have to be involved, and we sell water at much lower price, he says. All units will be moved to digital in the next few months. However, the prices of the units are not cheap. Paragon says its units, which use the cooling and condensing system, cost between $60,000 and $70,000. Meanwhile, Ms. Kogies says a large unit of theirs costs $18,000. But Mr. Shrivastava points that making water in situ has a cost advantage, as water is quite heavy and not easy to transport around. Looking ahead, Rava Laus is exploring how advancements in material science to improve the efficacy of desiccants, or how utilizing a different material for absorbing more moisture from the air can make the process more effective. Mr. Shrivastava says these advancements will also result in reducing the heat requirement for 60 degrees to 40 degrees. They are also hoping to run pilot projects involving installing its units in data centers in India and Singapore. Data centers generate a lot of heat, which is usually lost, but Uravu plans to instead use it to create fresh water. This process will result in up to 95% reduction in fresh water consumption by the data center, as Uravu's system captures most of the waste heat and gives back cold water. Thus, very little fresh water is needed as a top-up. For 32-year-old Amy, the prospect of starting a family remains out of reach. She and her husband were priced out of their 2-bedroom house in Surrey when their landlord hiked their rent by £300 a month, forcing them to move into a smaller 1-bedroom property. I'm at the age where I want to have children, but because we had to downsize, we were just unable to. She says she and her husband won't now try to start a family until they are able to move again. I now pretty much live out of one room. I pretty much work, sleep and everything from my bedroom. UK rents rose by 9% over the 12 months leading up to February, the highest annual increase since the Office for National Statistics began keeping records in 2015. Housing has been a constant stress for Amy, as she recalls her previous experience renting, involving black mould, damp and water dripping down walls. There was a period when I had a lot of difficulty with anxiety and stress. I caught shingles nearly a year ago due to stress issues I had either with money or housing. She is considering relocating to the north of England as the only way to get on the property ladder, but that would mean moving away from her extended family and support network. She fears that she'll be a perpetual renter. Amy is not alone. A recent survey conducted by Shelter and YouGov suggested that 54% of women feel that being a renter has held them back in some way. That is compared to 48% of men. Rhiannon, age 27, says renting has left her feeling reduced to a paycheck. If you're not willing to pay more, you're gone, she explains, describing a dramatic ultimatum she faced while renting in London: accept a 65% rent increase or face a no-fault eviction. Rhiannon was evicted. At the time, she was a student and says the stress caused by the eviction made her delay her law exams and even her graduation. The Renters Reform Bill, which intended to put an end to Section 21 no-fault evictions, has been postponed until after the upcoming general election on the 4th of July. Rhiannon says that her managing agents would arrange for handymen to come around to do repairs without consulting her first. I woke up one day, went to shower in the morning at around 8:15 a.m. I opened my bathroom door in a towel, and there was a man sat on my floor facing my bathroom door. I didn't even know what to say. I couldn't say anything. After reporting it to the agency, she says they dismissed her, siding with the man who denied being property. It impacted every part of my life and my mental health. I was having a lot of panic attacks, and I had to put up cameras. I felt so unsafe. On top of feeling violated, she says the eviction made her feel that nothing is permanent. How badly landlords behave affects everything, because it's your home. That's where you're based, that's your life, and for most of us, it's now work and study, and everything happens at home after COVID. Although many aspects of renting, such as steep rent rises and poor property conditions, affect all tenants, Zubaida Haik, Deputy Director at the Women's Budget Group, believes women often are more severely impacted. Many women face harassment and intimidation from landlords, a reflection of persistent power imbalances, which can also leave women feeling too afraid to challenge unfair practices or to assert their rights, fear of retaliation, eviction, rent increases, or further harassment. Because women earn less than men, they are less able to afford housing, and their caring responsibilities mean they have specific needs when securing a suitable home for themselves and their children. For 38-year-old single mum Chelsea, finding stability was a difficult decision and a bad journey, but she struggled to even find a place to rent to begin with. I was sleeping on a blow-up mattress with my son in my boss's lounge room for 6 months, living out of suitcases. Chelsea recalls landlords proposing that she pays 6 months' rent up front to gain a competitive advantage. As a single mum, I was really on the back foot because I couldn't have offered it. Chelsea claims that as soon as she mentioned that she was a single parent, she was put on the back burner. I just wanted to put a roof over my kid's head, and it was really hard. Balancing her job and motherhood was a constant struggle, she says. Mentally, I was a wreck all the time. I'm a chef, so I'd be standing at work, cooking, and I would just start crying. I've been a very successful chef in London, and here I was feeling like complete and utter failure. She is now happily settled in Somerset, but that meant taking the difficult decision to leave London. A spokesperson for the National Residential Landlords Association said the ongoing shortage of rental homes in the market means that it can be very challenging for tenants to find property to call home. There is, however, no reason why a rented property should not be a safe and secure home. It is both in the landlord and tenant's interest to sustain long-term, stable tenancies. The overwhelming majority of landlords are responsible providers of high-quality private rented accommodation who have a positive relationship with their tenants. Conservative Party spokesman said we are committed to creating a fairer market for renters, sticking to our plan to deliver a more secure future for the whole country. Our plan to deliver the homes people need is working, building 1 million more homes since 2019 and increasing that local housing allowance by £800. Angela Rayner, Lane's Shadow Secretary of State for Housing, said no one should have to be put their life on hold due to unaffordable housing. Regardless of whether someone is a homeowner, a leaseholder or a tenant, everyone has the basic right to a decent, secure and affordable home. She added that Labour would abolish Section 21 no-fault evictions and prohibit landlords from demanding significant sums in advance rent. What are your renting rights? How much can my landlord increase the rent? It depends on your agreement, but rises must be fair, realistic and in line with local properties, and there's usually a month's notice. Can my landlord evict me? Landlords need to follow strict rules such as giving written notice. Once the notice period ends, the landlord can start eviction proceedings through court. Can a landlord refuse people on benefits? No. DSS policies are unlawful discrimination, say Charity Shelter. Some councils have lists of private landlords who rent to tenants claiming benefits. The worst decision of my life reflects Richard Moore as he sits in the small flat he bought as an investment to provide him with a pension in his old age. My service charges have doubled from £4,000 to £8,000 a year. I feel like I'm being robbed. Just with the building's cladding also render the flat effectively worthless unless it is fixed, he says. The flat Richard paid £300,000 for in 2016 is leasehold, which means he doesn't own the physical flat, but a lease allowing him to own it for a specified number of years. Freeholder owns the physical building and the land it's built on, and employs a managing agent to act on their behalf and collect services, charges to cover the cost of maintaining and insuring the building. The managing agent says the increase is justified because the roof needs repairing. Richard points out the flats are less than 10 years old. Reforms to leaseholder and freehold became a law on Friday, one of the last pieces of legislation to make it through Parliament before it was shut down for the general election. It will help the estimated 5 million leasehold property owners, the vast majority of them in flats in England and Wales, only countries still to operate the leasehold system. It will make extending their leases cheaper and simpler, with a standard 990-year lease on renewal. There is also a duty on managing agents to be more transparent about their costs when billing leaseholders for service charges and maintenance, say they already are, although he disagrees. According to the Property Institute TPI, the trade body for managing agents, service charges like Richard's have risen by over 40% in the last 5 years, but just 4% in the last 12 months. We have got above inflation increases in service charges, and that comes as no surprise to any leaseholders, the TPI's Andrew Bulmer says. Some service charges have gone up a moderate amount, but there are some, especially those in taller and complex buildings, that are difficult to ensure, where the service charges have rocketed, and those individuals will certainly be hurting. Mr. Bulmer denies managing agents are making excessive profits, saying margins are tight. He points to TPI data which suggests the only cost that has not seen above inflation rises is the fees managing agents charge to cover their own admin and running costs. Mr. Bulmer suggests the new legislation is a missed opportunity for proper regulation, with penalties for managing agents who step out of line. What regulation would do, it wouldn't just regulate performance in terms of transparency or publishing information, but it starts to regulate behaviours, and when you regulate behaviours, you start to introduce trust in the relationship between the service provider and customers. The TPI data suggests the biggest single factor driving up service charge costs are buildings' insurance premiums, up 92% in 5 years. Insurers say that in the wake of the Grenfell Tower fire and subsequent cladding and building safety crisis, they have no option. We empathise with the plight of leaseholders and the fact that they're under emotional and financial strain, and we're doing all we can to support that, says Mervyn Skeet from the Association of British Insurers. However, he adds, I think the industry is correctly pricing the risk that's there. Unfortunately, the risk wasn't known in the same way prior to the tragedy at Grenfell. Now the risk is well known. But premiums are still going up year on year despite government pledging several £billion to remove flammable cladding and other building safety issues. The new leasehold laws will also restrict insurance brokers' ability to charge large commissions for writing the policies, which it is claimed some managing agents have passed on to leaseholders with an additional administration charge of their own. Nearly all of the tower blocks with the same cladding as Grenfell have now been fixed, according to government figures. Mr. Skeet said the government was only fixing buildings to what he called a life safety standard so that people could escape, but the insurance industry had to go further. Getting buildings to life safety standards is obviously very important, but we need to assess the resilience of the building, price for the cost of the whole building being lost. Many insurers became more risk-averse following Grenfell, refusing to provide cover for tower blocks with safety issues. The government has been putting pressure on the industry over soaring premiums charged by those still prepared to take on the risk. As a result, insurers have just launched a new scheme which aims to better share the risk of the most dangerous blocks which have yet to be repaired, of which there are still several thousand according to the End Our Cladding Scandal campaign. Mr. Skeet said we hope to see that scheme having an impact over the next 12 months. The capacity in the market and the basic supply and demand should lead to changes in premiums. Among those as yet unremediated flats with cladding and safety issues is Richards in Woden. His experience means he thinks fewer and fewer people will consider ever buying or living in a leasehold property. It's affecting millions of people in this country. I'm not the only cladding hostage out there. The Labour investigation into Diane Abbott over comments she made on racism was completed in December 2003. Miss Abbott, the long-standing MP for Hickney North and at Stoke Newington, was given a formal warning over her conduct and required to complete an anti-Semitism awareness course. A source close to the veteran politician said despite that, she still had not been told whether she will be allowed to stand as a Labour candidate in her constituency at the general election. Miss Abbott was suspended as a Labour MP 13 months ago after suggesting that Jewish, Irish and Traveller people were not subject to all their lives. She apologised on X, formerly known as Twitter, and withdrew her remarks. The source close to Miss Abbott said that she was not expecting her suspension to be lifted. They accused the party of having a predetermined outcome and dragging out the process in order to block her from being a candidate at the election. The Labour Party told Newsnight that it does not comment on disciplinary cases. Labour's National Executive Committee, NEC, wrote to Miss Abbott in December 2023, saying it had concluded its 8-month inquiry into her comments. It issued her with a formal warning for engaging in conduct that was, in the opinion of the NEC, prejudicial and grossly detrimental to the Labour Party. It said it expected her to undertake an online e-learning module, which a source said it was a 2-hour anti-Semitism awareness course. Miss Abbott did the module in February, after which it is understood she received an email from Labour's chief whip acknowledging that she had completed it. On Friday, Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has said that Diane Abbott is going through and being part of and getting to the end of the disciplinary process because of something she said. He said it would be sorted out now within a few days because the deadline for candidates is coming. Miss Abbott currently sits as an independent MP and is not allowed to represent Labour in the House of Commons. She has been an MP since 1987, was the first black woman elected to Parliament and a loyal supporter of former party leader Jeremy Corbyn. She's said to be angry, depressed and worn out by the way she feels the party has treated her, but is said to be buoyed by the support of activists in her constituency. Her suspension came after she wrote in a letter to the Observer newspaper that Irish, Jewish and Traveller people undoubtedly experienced prejudice which she said is similar to racism. The letter added it is true that many types of white people with points of difference such as redheads can experience this prejudice, but they are not all their lives subject to racism. In her apology, Miss Abbott said errors rose in an initial draft that was sent, adding but there is no excuse, and I wish to apologise for any anguish caused. BBC Newsnight understands Ms Abbott clarified to the NEC that the initial draft was the only version that had been written. Sir Keir condemned Ms Abbott's comments the day after the letter was published as anti-Semitic, saying that we must never accept that there's some sort of hierarchy of racism. The party said it had introduced an independent complaints process to investigate cases. When asked if Ms Abbott would return to Labour, the Shadow Secretary of State for Business, Jonathan Reynolds, told the BBC the process we have in the Labour Party is frankly not one that any politician in the Labour Party decides, so I can't give you an answer on that. We want that situation resolved. We all want to see that resolved. I think that in any disciplinary matter, you need both sides to engage in it. I generally have no additional information other than that. Former Post Office Chief Executive Paula Venables has broken her almost decade-long silence on the Horizon IT scandal. She was quizzed over the course of 3 days on how things unfolded during her time at the head of the organisation by both the Council to the Public Inquiry and lawyers speaking on behalf of sub-postmasters. It was the most anticipated appearance in the long-running inquiry into what has been described as the biggest miscarriage of justice in British history. She wasn't on trial, but she might just as well have been. Over the 3 days, Paula Venables faced an onslaught of hostile questions. Lead counsel to the inquiry, Jason Beer, was settled but probing. The lawyers for the sub-postmasters, who had the final say, were hard-hitting and merciless. To begin with, the former post office boss was poised. There were carefully prepared apologies to sub-postmasters to Alan Bates, whose campaign for justice formed the centrepiece of the ITV drama Mr Bates' First Post Office, and to others. There was a great deal she said that she couldn't remember. There was even more she claimed she had never been told. The Post Office may have been aware that the Horizon IT system was deeply flawed and that a key witness had failed to disclose vital information to courts, but Miss Venables, it seems, wasn't. Then her composure failed, asked by Mr Beer whether she had misled MPs about cases involving Horizon. She broke down in tears. She recovered, then cried again when asked about the case of Martin Griffiths, a sub-postmaster who took his own life after being financially ruined by the post office. It wouldn't be the last time, but her tears attracted scant sympathy from the victims of the scandal watching her in the TV in the room. The emergence of blistering texts between Miss Venables and Dame Moya Green, Royal Mail's former boss, was one of the week's more shocking moments. The two exchanged messages after ITV aired its drama in January, which thrust the decades-old scandal back into the spotlight. When it was clear that the system was at fault, Post Office should have raised a red flag, stopped all proceedings, given people back their money, and then tried to compensate them for the ruin that this caused in their lives, then Moya said in a text message. Miss Venables agreed, "This has and is taking to Lord Moya. The toll on everyone affected is dreadful." Then came the gut punch. "I don't know what to say. I think you knew," said Dame Moya. "No, Moya, that isn't the case," replied Miss Venables. It was a question that Jason Beer also wanted an answer to. How could you not know? "This is a situation that is so complex. It is a question I have asked myself as well," said Miss Venables. "I have learned some things that I did not know as a result of the inquiry, and I mentioned that we will all go through some of the detail of that. I wish I had known." Miss Venables was running a big business and in charge of thousands of staff. The inquiry wanted to know how much she knew about what was going on in her organisation. In key areas, she claims her knowledge was limited. According to Miss Venables' 775-page written statement, she wasn't being given the information she needed to find out the truth about the Horizon IT system. Mr Beer wasn't impressed and asked her, "Do you think you're the unluckiest CEO in history?" Miss Venables says the problem was I was too trusting, and some of her staff let her down, but some weren't allowed to be heard. Her head of legal was kept up for post office board meeting, like a naughty schoolgirl, according to Mr Beer. One key element of the Horizon scandal is that Post Office conducted its own prosecution of sub-postmasters. Miss Venables told the inquiry it took 5 years of working at the Post Office for her to find out about that. Mr Beer seemed baffled by this, and there was incredulous laughter from those in the room. Some of the most revealing exchanges weren't around the IT systems, but about press. Sub-postmasters more suspected the organisation was most focused on its brand than its people. In 2013, when issues with bugs were discovered, Miss Venables was internally questioning if there should be a review of past prosecutions going back many years. The PR boss advised against this. "We don't want to be front-page news." Miss Venables said she would never have made a legal decision based on optics. The problem, her response contained the phrase, "I will take your steer." another occasion, the chief executive sent an email in which she said her goal was that all press be scoured for negative comment and refute it. Ms. Reynolds claimed that the email was being read wrong. She was only trying to make sure inaccurate misrepresentations were corrected. Is that believable or a sign of a defensive culture? That is for the inquiry chair to decide. Whatever the truth is, it is clear the love and trust people have for the organisation Ms. Reynolds used to lead had been badly damaged. Another standout moment came from Ms. Reynolds was asked about the flotation of Royal Mail in 2013. Post Office used to be part of Royal Mail, but was split off when the then coalition government decided to privatise the UK's postal service. The board of the Post Office had come alarmed about potential civil claims for wrongful prosecutions, to the point where it notified the Post Office's insurers. Ms. Reynolds admitted that revelations about possible prosecution failures during a time when Royal Mail was in charge of the Post Office would have been devastating for privatisation. Royal Mail director Ms. Owen had wanted to include a reference to the Horizon IT system in the prospectus for flotation, but Ms. Reynolds admitted that she'd arranged for it to be removed, telling her boss afterwards, "I've earned my keep on this one." In fact, she listed keeping Horizon out the Royal Mail flotation prospectus as one of her key achievements for the year. Edward Henry Casey, who's representing some of sub-postmasters at the inquiry, asked that if it had emerged that people were being wrongly prosecuted, it would have threatened to disrupt the flotation. "I'm sure that would have been the case," Ms. Reynolds said, but she added that she had no conversations about any strategy around the Royal Mail privatisation.